Hello, internet listeners, all the normal people out there, people who are watching us live, people who are in the room right now listening to us. This is the Noclip Crewcast, episode 196. We've been doing this for a while, almost episode 200. We got to get ready. This week, we are Danny and Frank free. They are out filming again, nonstop, those guys. I don't know where they find the energy or the time, but we are still, well, I am, you are too, joined by the precocious Jeremy Jane. Jeremy,
precocious. How goes? It goes well. Yeah, I'm chilling. I slept terribly last night. Do you ever have like a stress dream where you're doing like a repetitive task? I feel like I only have every dream I have is a stress dream. But there's one particular flavor of stress dream where you're like, I gotta get this thing right, and you keep doing it over and over for like 6 hours. I had one of those dreams where I was like, I can't even remember the details. I was just doing some repetitive task. I couldn't get it right. And then in the dream, I had a moment come where I was like, oh, I don't have to do this. I'm dreaming. And it felt like such a relief because I've been doing it for like fucking hours.
What was the task again?
I don't know. I don't even
know?
remember the task. No, I just remember I was doing something. I had this weird glimpse of like, there were like lights that would light up when I like arranged things in a certain way. I feel like when I dream, I go into like an alien laboratory where they're testing me for like to see if I'm intelligent enough to ascend humanity.
They're doing like a stamina test on your brain to see how long you can just deal with these lights going on. It sounds like you were doing a Skinner box experiment or something in your sleep.
I think I was at like some sort of CIA black site where they take me when I sleep.
Jeez, they're beaming your brain into a different body to do the tests. Who knows?
Yeah.
I hope not. I'm trying to think if I have the repetitive thing. I think the one that I had, I remember this so fondly. Fondly is maybe the wrong word. Every day when I'd walk to school for like a week, I would envision a glass of milk falling over, and like I couldn't unspill the milk.
Like, wait, in your dream, or you would think about this when you were walking to school?
In my dream, I was like, for like a week, I would dream of going to school and see like a glass of milk fall over on the way to school. And this was like for a week. I think it might have been the week I was eating sour cherry blasters every day before bed. That might have contributed to it. So I don't know. It stressed me out. Then I would like wake up and go to school and be like, God, I hope there's no milk on the way there.
That sounds like a shot they would cut to in like an Orson Welles movie, and they would never explain like what the spilled milk represents, like a Citizen Kane motif, you know. Right. And then the protagonist would be like, you'd see him doing one of these faces, and then it would cut to the milk spilling, and then everyone like in your college prep film class would be like, so what do you think the milk represents? And everyone would be like, I think it's like his inability to like connect with other people, probably something like that.
Whoa, okay, stop, settle down, all right? Don't
settle down,
don't start hitting me with that. We're referencing things that we said before we started recording.
We were talking about B.F. Skinner before this, yeah.
Yeah, we're having different conversations. Sorry, everybody. You're in on the joke now. We're giving context.
Welcome to the joke.
Yeah, this is the Crewcast this week. It's just going to be a good time. We're just hanging out. A couple of J-holes, having a good time. Talking about some video games. Looks like Jeremy's played some fun stuff, including Deadlock. Did you play the Metaphor ReFantazio
I
demo?
did. Let me update the
so it's no longer a maybe.
I get a little sloppy on the document when it's just me and Jesse because
sloppy on the document.
He's a nice guy and he's not going to give me any shit about it.
No, we're just having a good time. I don't care. I'm having fun. We're talking about some demos, a demo as well. I guess two demos because it was the Metaphor one. Citizen Sleeper 2's demo. We're going to talk about that a little bit later and other things probably. I've been, for the last couple of weeks now, since we got like finished our wedding celebration, I've been doing a lot of like house maintenance. I don't know what it is. Like, I think mentally I was done getting married. So I was like, okay, time to just lock in and be a husband. Time to go buy a tool belt and I don't know, figure out, get a membership to Home Depot. I don't know. Is that a thing in America? Home Depot? Is that?
Yeah, of course.
No? Yeah. Okay. All right. I never know. I feel like I have to double check on brand.
No, it's good to check. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, good. Estonian Home Depot. I'm hitting them up.
Well, no, everywhere in America.
no,
I don't know if they have it in like Argentina. They might.
We should check. Argentinian fans, let us know in the comments. And so I've just been doing loads and loads of like house maintenance, cleaning. We painted. We're getting ready to change out the flooring. It's currently carpet. We're going to go to vinyl and just snap it all in. Ooh. It has been a blast. Jeremy, I don't know if you do much like house maintenance stuff because you don't like you're not helping out your landlord, right?
Dude, this is weird to say. I dream of doing that kind of shit.
Dude, like, me too.
I love that shit. And I've been renting for my entire adult life, obviously, because, you know, a mortgage is an ungodly amount of money. But I dream, like, I think most people in my generation are like, I'll never own a home. And I'm like, I'll own a home because I want a piece of shit house. So I can like work. I want like I want to spend like no money on a piece of land and put like a 300 square foot shack on it and just be like working on it. You know, I want either to buy a rotting house or to build my own like janky small house.
One day.
Yeah. What's your favorite? What gets you like in the zone? What puts you in like a state of zen working?
You know what it is? It's I start off before I start like locking in and deciding to pick a job I'm going to do. I do the lawn on the Friday. Yeah. And then the rest of the weekend, I'll pick 3-4 tasks that I feel like I can do in that weekend. So last weekend, God, man. See, all the weekends are blurring together because we cleaned the garage the week before that, which was a pain in the ass. That was full of so much stuff. This is like her mom's house or her dad's house, rather, her grandma's house. I was supposed to go to her dad and then went to her. So we got very lucky. Don't have a mortgage. Like,
hell yeah.
Shout outs to nepotism for houses. Inheritance, I guess is the word. And it's been like a really fun job of going through and doing all this stuff. Yesterday, I switched out the toilet valve, like the fill valve. Switched out the toilet seats. I want to start working on the garden, though. We have these weeds back there that are just insane. They're like so tall. We're talking like 4 foot tall weed trees. I think it's called the Tree of Heaven. It might have a different name. I know.
Tree of Heaven.
I know. I was Googling trying to figure out what it is, and I finally found it. It's like a tree from some part of China, I think, or like part of Southeast Asia. And it's like this terrible invasive species tree that you can't kill by cutting it down because it just spreads so many seeds. They tried cutting it down before, and we have 2 more trees, at least 2, of that species in the backyard. And there's this lantern fly, this like dangerous, like agriculturally destroying fly or bug, insect, whatever, that lives on that tree. And so they're telling us to get rid of it because it's going to it could mess up the crops and everything. And I'm fighting I went and bought a hatchet. I bought some Roundup.
Dude, this sounds like they should call it the Tree of Hell. I feel like it's a bad tree. Also, this conversation is making me think that you and I would be the best like middle-aged neighbor guys.
Oh yeah.
Like I feel like if we like lived in the same neighborhood, I feel like if we were on alternate sides of the fence, you know, like a Home Improvement types Tim Allen situation. Exactly like that. I feel like we would like crack a shitty beer and we'd be like, yeah, this tree's been giving me hell, man.
Yeah, man. We should call it the Tree of Hell.
This is the exact conversation we would have.
At like 100%. I would love, because if we were neighbors, I feel like I would go over to you and ask you for a small wooden figure or some sort of chair for you to make. And then I would be like, what appliance do you need changed? Do you want me to do your outlets? That's what I did last week, actually, as I changed the light switches. Which,
oh, dude, I would have you do that. I'm terrified of electricity.
I was horrified doing that. We had to go figure out the breakers. This house is from the, I want to say 70s, 60s maybe. So I don't know what the wiring.
You're going to say the 1700s for some reason.
We live in a log cabin. No,
holy shit.
It's like this. I have no idea what's going on with the wiring in the house. I have no idea how everything works in it. Every time I turn something on or discover how it was connected, I'm like, who in their right mind thought that was the way? Half the house is like on one breaker. I don't know what they were thinking. But switching out those light switches was terrifying. I had they make these pens that you can use to check the voltage. Yeah. But they go off they're very sensitive, right? So if there's any electricity in the area, it goes off, which is great. That way you're not getting right up on it and shocked. But that thing was going off sometimes when I was switching out the light switches, and I was like, no, just constantly terrified for my life.
You should make a like an indie horror game where, you know how like indie horror games will always have like, oh, it's like the radio, and the radio will like fizzle if there's like a ghost nearby. Like they always have very kind of like tangible, grounded kind of like tools and instruments.
Yeah.
You should make one of those games just about home improvement, and there's no scares in it. Like it's just atmosphere, and you're like, it's like change out the light switches, and everyone's like, when's it gonna happen? Like, oh, the electricity thing's going on. Is that an EVP? You know, is there a ghost nearby? And it's like, oh no, it's just the breakers.
It's just mediocre
stressed.
Wiring. It's just
Yep.
The scariest thing I can imagine is not performing maintenance on a home for 50 years straight.
Yeah. The real twist is that you find black mold, and then there's like the scary violin sting, like the. It's just like you just found some rot in the wood.
It's conscript for home ownership instead of World War One.
Exactly. And when we talk about it on the podcast, we're like, yeah, it's funny, you know, like you never think about like home improvement as like a horror concept, and they've really zoomed in here on what's terrifying about owning a home.
That's right. And, our favorite homeowners who I'm sure have had to deal with their own terrifying issues include the great people over at patreon.com/noclip who support all the work that we do, this 100% ad-free podcast. They fund our documentaries. And by doing so, they get access to tons of cool behind-the-scenes stuff, access to documentaries way earlier than everyone else. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's less time than that. And they get to know what we're doing before everybody else. So if you want to join that list of great people, head on over to patreon.com/noclip and support us at the tippy top tier to join the fantastic Battle Pass holders, including Eamon Slattery, Harry Flanagan, Battle Royale Games, Arno, Richard Matherson, James Brown, Mark Rojas, Ryan Cobb, Tucker Morgan, David McGarry, Sven Huster, Pez, Int Nate, Tim Robinson, Forrest Pruitt, Jonathan Kremen, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Cameron Ladd. I got nothing. I was thinking of something and I had nothing. I apologize.
I feel like building it up and then doing it normal was the thing.
That was the bit. Zachary Snader, Alex Sharp, Alex Goucher, George Zerkotis, Jacob Godserve, Tohir Tiliev, and Ryson. Thank you all so much for your support, helping us buy a DeWalt level. I don't know why he spent $50 on one of those, helping us pay our landlords and also go on fun trips to film new things for you that are very exciting. And I hope you look forward to all the projects that we have in the pipeline. But in the meantime, there are some video games that we're going to talk about, including one that I feel like the Noclip crew probably should have talked about before it popped off, but if we did, we might have been sued by a company that we like to have an okay relationship with. Deadlock, the new team-based hero shooter, right, from Valve, is now public knowledge, and I guess we can talk about it. It's been weeks now.
So I've been playing this for a while. I was scared to talk about it because that guy from The Verge or whatever posted an article like the second half of August and was like, "This is the game that everyone's playing and no one's talking." And then Valve banned him instantly because when you used to fire a Deadlock, there was a little message that you did not have to click through. It was an optional it was a polite request that said, "Please do not talk about this game, please, oh God." And he did not heed the request. But then they shortly thereafter lifted the embargo. People stream it now, whatever. So I have not played a ton of this. I've played probably somewhere between 12 and 15 hours of it. So pales in comparison to my several hundred hours of Dota or whatever. And I have really been enjoying it. This game is kind of like outside of my wheelhouse a little bit. I have probably like 500 or 600 hours in Dota. Never played League of Legends. Have not played Overwatch.
So
played
this is more of a MOBA then?
So that is the interesting thing about this. That is kind of the thing that I think is like worth talking about here. Is my initial impression of Deadlock is that it was like this is kind of the thing that turned me off from trying it. Is I was like, okay, so they looked at the popularity of I don't mean to say they're being derivative. One of the people who allegedly worked on this was Ice Frog, who was like the lead on Dota 2. So there's there's a pedigree here of people who are like very influential in the genre or like defined the genre to begin with. But my perception of it was that this was kind of they looked at team-based hero shooters, they looked at MOBAs, and they were like, what if we took these two popular things and just like met in the middle genre-wise? And that didn't really appeal to me because I was kind of like, like it's kind of like it's a fallacy that if you take two good things and mash them together, they'll make a good new thing. Oftentimes, it just results in like a watered down version of those two things commingling. But playing Deadlock, it's a MOBA. Like it's way more of a MOBA than a hero shooter. And that sounds like a subtle distinction than being like a hybridization, but I think the distinction there, the meaningful distinction, is that it is like it's at its core a MOBA, but they're building on the genre of the MOBA, taking lessons from those other genres rather than hybridizing them. And to me, I think this is interesting because one of the things that kind of made me stop playing MOBAs is have you played much like Dota or League of Legends at all?
Yeah, I played like probably 2,000 hours of League of Legends in high school. So
holy shit!
I have the brain rot. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. So, when you're playing a MOBA and you like die or, back to base or whatever, buy your boots, and then you're headed back to your lane. And as you're moving, there's kind of like nothing to do with all of the nervous energy. So you just right click like 6,000 fucking times. I feel like what that points to is a sort of like squandered potential in player expression in the genre of MOBAs, because they're locked down, they're heavy, they're like stiff or something. Like it's not like a free flowing player expression type genre. It's more just like, what if I had one unit in the RTS and they had to wait for them to get to the tower? I feel like Deadlock addresses this because it's a fucking movement game. Like there's a lot of verticality to it. There's like there's a dash and a jump, but you can combo them into like a little dash jump. Some heroes can fly. There's like buildings that you can zoop up on top of and like snipe down from. So it feels like, well, you're also like, just having it be a third person shooter or whatever, there's a lot more kind of like immediate visceral concentration that it takes to aim and shoot and move and schmoove and jump around and like also have the sort of positional awareness that a MOBA requires. And so it feels like it is a lot more like cognitively all-consuming in a way that feels to me more engaging and less. Sometimes when I used to finish a Dota match, I'd be like, did I even like that? Like, my relationship to Dota was similar to my relationship to tobacco, where like towards the end of when I was a smoker, I was like, I don't even really like this. I just do this, And that was kind of the thing that made me stop. Dota is a fantastic game. I'm not denigrating.
No, it's the cigarettes of video games.
Dota.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. I'm not denigrating tobacco here. The fine folks at Philip Morris, you don't need to come put a bullet in my head or anything. Yeah, no, the morally dubious folks at Philip Morris. But yeah, anyway, it feels like it really just feels like to me a progression of MOBAs as a genre in a way that makes them more interesting, more like active, have more player expression, more free flowing. But it at its core really is about, for anyone who has not played a MOBA, there are little NPC creeps that move up the lanes. You kill them to get farm. The farm gets you items. You're trying to take down towers to progress through these lanes to an enemy base to win. So at its core, this is just a MOBA. But the addition of heroes with abilities in third person with shooting, it feels like it elevates the genre, and it feels like those heroes are very well designed. The game is sort of like in an experimental phase. When you boot it up, it says like everything is on the table to be changed, basically. Like the art will probably change, the abilities will probably change. So this is a game that is in early development, but it feels like it is already kind of in terms of its gameplay, in terms of the abilities, in terms of the balance between different heroes. It feels like, it's exploring sort of like somewhat familiar stuff. Like there's a guy who has like a Bebop has like a Pudge style, like, Mortal Kombat Get Over Here, where he grabs you and pulls you and stuff. So Classic. It has familiar elements. But it, I feel like it's doing, it's playing the hits, but it's also kind of doing a thing that feels like it's moving MOBAs forward as a genre.
Very cool, because I know, like, I played it, like I said, a ton of League of Legends. I played a good bit of Dota, probably more hours than I realize. If I checked Steam, it's probably more hours of League of Legends, if we're being honest, too. So playing in that genre was something that I did a lot in high school, and I saw this progression very early on, around the time of League of Legends, when that was sort of like popping off for me, where there were other games trying to do the same sort of thing, like Smite was like a third-person MOBA focused on, I think, Egyptian gods. It might have just been all mythological gods. And then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles eventually. As we all know, the most important
they're gods
gods
to me.
They're the gods of Manhattan, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
And they tried finding new ways to spin up the genre, but it kind of felt like it got locked in place. It was Dota, League of Legends. That was about it. I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting, but for the most part, it was just those two, and they kind of led the way forward. It's hard to have multiple of something in a genre, especially when it's so specifically designed, like having the lanes and having the towers and the creeps and everything. If it's doing the same thing, what's the reason for me to switch over to this one if everyone I know is still playing the one that I was playing? I think it's smart that Deadlock isn't just trying to, because they already have Dota. Like, make something that can appeal to that player base, but is maybe in a different framework that will also work for people who like third-person shooters, but like are looking for something more to do in them or whatever, right? Enough people know how to play Fortnite. This seems like it's kind of in the same direction, right? It's a third-person shooter. You see your character on the screen, right? So it's that same sort of thing.
Yeah, I could see it being an easy jump from Fortnite. Also, I did play a tiny bit of Smite, and while it does kind of address the, having more like visceral actions to do and kind of player expression stuff, it's just like, I just didn't think it was. I thought it was like fine.
It wasn't fun. No.
Yeah. This like, I don't know. Maybe Deadlock isn't as much of a sort of like genre defining, like new groundbreaking type of game as whatever Team Fortress or Counter-Strike or whatever. I mean, it's hard to compare. It's not as groundbreaking as like the most famous video game ever or whatever. But yeah, it feels like it is doing the impossible, which is kind of what Smite kind of failed to do for me, which was take a very popular genre, push it in a new direction, and have it feel like a meaningful game design progress in that direction. It's not just like, oh, what if your Dota hero was like visible from a different angle and controlled slightly differently? It feels like they took those differences, those meaningful differences, and leveraged them into like meaningful game feel and gameplay differences.
So the game loop, it sounds like, is very similar to a genre that I feel like probably millions and millions of people are at least aware of. But from the hero perspective, because you said this is like half hero shooter sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Valorant, Overwatch. You haven't put too much time into it, but are there any characters that stuck out to you that seemed interesting? I know Valve is very, very good at making distinct, high quality characters, and I haven't seen any of them from this yet, assumably.
Yeah.
Presumably because it's not out yet, technically.
Yeah, so that disclaimer part of it is that some of the art is placeholder. Some of it feels more or less placeholder. Some of it feels very polished and the character designs are very cool and interesting. Some of them feel a little less cool and interesting. I don't know. It's hard for me to compare because like when I think back on the release of TF2, I remember thinking how TF2 was kind of like instantly iconic. Like the Heavy was like a character whose silhouette was very recognizable. His like strong Russian accent, his kind of like mannerisms and characteristics. It felt like TF2 had this over the top cartoonishness to it that made these characters kind of like grokkable as entities. I don't know if Deadlock is quite there yet. Some of the characters, their designs are very interesting. There's like, I always forget their name. I'm always just like, oh, it's the guy with wings. I'm terrible at remembering names. But there's like, the theme of it is like the aesthetic theme of it is that it's like a 1930s Prohibition era New York, but with the occult, which is kind of an interesting twist.
That's really cool.
Yeah, there's like not that many games about like the Prohibition era. So, so there's like a dude who's like a little, I think it's Ivy. It's like a little kind of like gargoyle demon with wings, with like a flat cap, like a cabbie little hat, and a little kind of like, I think it's like a Sten or something, or like a Spanish Civil War machine gun.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know how many of the characters are going to be. Like, I don't know if people are going to be cosplaying. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. People cosplay literally everything. But they do not strike me as the type of characters where I'm like, oh, I got to get a figurine of, like, Kelvin, the Viking guy who, like, is like a snowman or whatever. It doesn't have that same stickiness to it yet. But also, they're characters in flux. Their designs are in flux. And who knows? It could also be the kind of thing where it's like you spend time with these characters and then grow attached to them or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there are some interesting characters. Vindicta, I've played a bunch, who's like a sniper. She's like a lady with like a blue lady in a dress with no shoes on for some reason, who's like a sniper. I don't really know
For
what the
some
reference is
reason,
there.
I can think of the reasons. They own Source Filmmaker. They know what they're doing.
they were like, Kojima, what do we do? And he was like, I got just the idea. What if her fucking feet are out? And
They called
who else is
Tarantino. He
there? said
the same thing. Funny enough.
yeah. Those were the two references they pulled. They're like, I mean, everyone's saying we need feet. There's God, I'm terrible with names. There's like a lady who's like a very typical kind of like 1930s Prohibition era gangster with like a Tommy gun. She's got like the fucking Al Capone coat and hat, kind of like draped
Her
on
name's
her
not
and stuff.
Bonnie.
I wish I could remember. I'm
No?
embarrassed to say
Oh.
I forget all of the fucking names. I'm so bad. It's like,
Let me see
you know,
if I
when
can
you've
figure it out. Go on.
You know, I mean, yeah, I could look it up, but I would just start talking more slowly. I feel like it's like I don't know. The thing is like, you know, when you've played 10 hours of a MOBA, but not 50 hours, and you're trying to do call outs, and you're like, he's a guy with the mustache is over there.
Yeah.
That's the phase I'm in right now.
Red hat guy. Get the red hat guy.
Or like, I'm embarrassed to be like, the dude, there's like a dude with a pompadour over there. And people are like, oh, you mean like that guy? I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
Is it
So,
Wraith?
Yeah. Yeah.
She has like a playing card in her hat.
Yes,
Yeah?
that is.
Okay.
It's Wraith. I was gonna say it's yeah, whatever. I was gonna say it's like grief, but I knew it wasn't grief. But I was mentally halfway there. But yeah, so she has like a Tommy gun. She like throws cards at people and whatever. And yeah, you have to like keep your reticle over people and the cards kind of hone in on them. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels like it's taking what's fun about MOBAs and transposing them really interestingly into a new dimension. Just adding a lot of dynamic elements to it.
You know what? I completely get what you're saying, and that a lot of these characters just kind of look like, I don't know. I wouldn't, after 15 hours, I wouldn't have a lot of these names locked, except for maybe the one that I played. You know, like if I played 15 hours of Infernus as one of the characters here, I'd probably know his name, but I can't, like, if you just didn't put the name up next to these characters, I wouldn't say what their name is. But these designs are sick. There are some
the designs are really
good designs here. Like, I've had access to this game since before it was public knowledge, thanks to one of our members on Patreon. But the some of these designs, man, I need to play this game just from the way these characters look. There's one called Mo and Krill, which looks like it's like
that's
a
one of my
monkey
favorite
on a
designs.
pig. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Or Paradox is like this cool robot dude with like a what do you call those? A lava lamp for a head, wearing like a three piece. Like, this is fantastic. Elvis is in the game.
Yeah, you got Elvis, you got Pocket, who looks like a little bit like Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
There, Shiv kind of looks like not Cowboy Bebop, Space Dandy.
Yeah. That was the Elvis Presley one I was trying to say, but it is more Space Dandy. You're right. This one, Seven, looks really cool. It's like a robot
Seven's really
samurai.
cool. I played him for the first time 2 nights ago. He has his ult is just like he creates like a you know those things at Spencer's Gifts where you put your hand on it, it makes your hair stand up on end. Like
the Tesla coils
Tesla
or
ball.
whatever. Yeah, Tesla balls. Yeah.
He just like you just run in as Seven and ult, and it makes this huge ball of electricity that does a ton of damage to anyone inside of it.
That's cool.
And it's really interesting because, you know, when there's a team fights kind of like happen at locations, and the locations kind of define how the team fight goes in some way. So having a character who can deny access to the entire area that the team fight is happening in, it kind of scatters the other team, and they either have to quickly coordinate and all fall back in the same direction, or they get scattered, and you know, and then your team can like capitalize on that. And there's interesting ways in which some of the abilities have like, what's the word? Like they sync up or something. They have like codependencies. So I was playing as Seven, and I ulted, and the other team was kind of at the outer fringes of the Spencer's Gift Tesla ball, and they all fell back, and I wasn't doing damage anymore. And then Ivy, who's the little flying gargoyle guy, has an ability where he can pick up characters on his team and then fly carrying them. Ooh. So he grabbed me while I was ulting, and then he carried me around flying over the enemy team so that I was like following them with my ult.
That's so cool.
It was really cool when that happened. It was like, oh, there is a lot of there's like a lot of strategic depth to this game that is not immediately apparent when you fire it up. There are things going on where there's like, you know, there's like low level play, mid level play, and I imagine there's like a high level play of you know, strats and techs that I'm just
Yeah, that's a
naive
synergy
to.
that I feel like MOBAs have a hard time getting across, and that just has more to do with how big the rosters end up getting. Like
Yeah.
League of Legends is, I don't even know how many characters now. The last time I played, I was like, there's 40 people I don't know, and I feel like I was really into this game for a while. So it's cool to know that they're doing more things that, like, obviously that's not maybe it's an intended part of it, but like the fact that the tools seem broader, like that flying ability seems like something you could use in multiple contexts to do what you're saying, but also just like to carry someone across the map to a different point and a different moment. Maybe not where you're trying to reposition their ult and make it so you can have it go wherever it needs to be, right? Or like the synergies are more free form, it sounds like, which is cool. Obviously, again, can't say I haven't played it, and you haven't put a ton of time in, so you can't say much about the specifics of it. But I think that speaks to Valve's approach for making games. They just make stuff that like feels fucking great. Just you could tell the broadness of their design and everything that they do, and like the stuff that they consider while making it. Also, I can't even imagine how many layers go into making another MOBA. Like this is their second one on hand.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because it's such well-trod ground that, like, you know, it's there's constantly the I mean, like I said, Bebop has like the pudge hook, and it's like there is a fine line between, you know, doing things that are like fun elements of the genre, and then you can easily cross over into, oh, I'm just playing Dota in third person or whatever. But yeah, to your point, it does feel like they're. And this is kind of an element of the game I'm just discovering after 15 hours. It does feel like a lot of these abilities are so open-ended that it is like, yeah, it's kind of like that Half-Life brain of game design where it's like, don't just give the player 4, give them 2+2 or whatever, you know, give them tools that have an open-ended application. Like the gravity gun is a great example where it's like, you know, the gravity gun can be used just to solve puzzles, and you can use traditional guns or whatever, but the gravity gun at some point clicks. You're like, oh, I can pick up the red barrels and shoot them. I can, you know, like everything, it transforms the world around you. And so like that Ivy being able to grab people and fly is like, is a teammate stunned behind enemy lines, grab them and pull them to safety. Or is like your teammate ulting but they can't move, grab them and pull them into the fray or whatever. So
I think the gravity gun is a really good example, actually, of what, obviously, I mean, it's one of the most iconic game tools ever, but a good example of what makes Valve stand out. And I think, again, what you're saying here in Deadlock is like, there's a world where a different studio tried to do that first. There probably is something like that, but Valve works and makes the game interesting. It makes the mechanic interesting because there's not gravity gun specific items in the world, you know?
Yeah,
like there's a worse version of Half-Life 2 where the gravity gun only picks up gravity gunnable things. Like any loose object in the world you could pick up with that. That's exciting. If it was just like, look for the stuff that's slightly yellow, that would have been the sort of like worst version of that. That doesn't really have much about what we're talking about. I just was thinking about how smart
I think
that is.
I think that's incredibly relevant. There was a prototype I was making where I was working on a mantle system for it. And at first I was like, you know, it was the first time I'd ever made a first person mantle system. And I was like, okay, well, let's think through this. How do you go about this? And I was like, okay, well, you could create, like, you could flag off certain areas with colliders where if the player is at a ledge, there's an invisible collider that they're inside of that tells the player controller, you can mantle here, right? But then if you have the player, this was a game also, it was the marching cube thing I mentioned months ago where like there was deformable terrain, so there would be places where you should be able to mantle, but I couldn't like generate colliders with enough fidelity or accuracy to those areas. So then I was like, all right, I need to make a mantle system that reads the terrain, as it were, that like is aware, you know, of what's around the player. So then it was like doing a series of raycasts from different angles to determine like, okay, is the player like facing a ledge, but they're not just like like you can't be 20 feet below a ledge and mantle up to it, right? So it's like shoot a raycast from like the feet, the stomach, the head, and see like, is this blocked? How far out? Is this blocked? How far out? And then and kind of like, you know, and then is the ledge sufficiently deep? Is it like a little tiny like inch ledge, or is there somewhere to land on the mantle? And once that started working, it was like, oh, this is cool and interesting because it's like creating an open-ended tool. And then I started fucking around with it. And so, I mean, it's like the thing, it's like when speedrunners play games and they're like, how can I break this? How can I take what the game has given me and apply it in unintended or interesting ways? I feel like a lot of times my favorite game design are games where, you know, like Prey or whatever with the goo gun, where it's like, can I get up here? Can I shoot enough goo to jump up to the ceiling? And yeah, I don't know. It's just fun. So I was not expecting that in a MOBA inspired genre, and then having my ult get carried into battle, I was like, well, holy shit! Like it made that part of my brain light up that like immersive Sims do or whatever, and it was happening in a genre where I do not anticipate that kind of experience.
Yeah, that has me very excited. Looking at these designs, hearing you describe the gameplay and the opportunities it holds, I think is something that will finally get me to click the play button for the game I have installed on my computer.
Yeah, we should play.
we should. I didn't know you were playing, or I would have said, "Hey, you want to hop on?"
I just
for a couple?
started recently. Yeah,
Oh,
my
okay.
friends have been playing. So they, I don't know. You know how it is when you live 3,000 miles away from your friends.
Yeah.
I'll play anything.
Please.
So I wasn't even that interested in Deadlock, but I was like, yeah, I'll play anything with you guys.
What do you want to do? If you want to play NHL 97 online, I'll do it. Let's do it. That is a fun game, actually. So never mind.
Hell yeah.
No, that's great. I have one more question though, and you're the final arbiter on this. Whatever answer you give is the one that will be the truth.
Uh-oh.
Do you think we have enough space for another multiplayer shooter like this?
I mean, like, kind of always, right?
Sure.
I don't know. Here's the thing: is like, I'm just grateful that while it does, I was skeptical because it bears such a striking resemblance to other games that exist, and I was like, oh, this is just Dota Overwatch or whatever, or like TF2 Overwatch Dota, and in some sense it does bear a resemblance to those things in aesthetic and game design, whatever. But I was just glad it's not like, listen, Riot makes very polished games, but at the end of the day, Riot makes their version of games that exist, right? Like,
Yeah.
that, like League of Legends is
The basis
has
of the fucking
differences
corporation
from
is
Dota.
copying something. Yeah.
Which is like, it's fine. It's fine. People love League of Legends. I'm more of a Dota guy. Valorant is a fun game. I played a bunch of Valorant, but it is, it's Counter-Strike at its core. It's, they call it a spike. It's just a bomb. They call it like a wind ability or whatever. It's like a smoke grenade.
Yeah.
And so I guess at the end of the day, I'm just glad that that Deadlock is doing that. It's not just Overwatch with creeps or in towers or whatever. That it feels like it is meaningfully different in a way that that I was pleasantly surprised by. So yeah, no shade towards Riot either. Like, Riot make great games. I'm excited to see what they do with their MMO.
Yeah.
If the Riot MMO is, if it's their take on 2004 World of Warcraft, sign me the fuck up. Like, that sounds great. I would love that.
Sure.
Or if they rip off Dark Age of Camelot, fucking this 33-year-old man will be delighted.
This 33-year-old man plays MMOs the old-fashioned way. He
Yeah,
still does.
exactly.
That's great. Yeah, I think I'm interested to see the long tail on it. Obviously, it's not out yet, so we'll have to see what happens when it's actually officially released and all of the tools are in place. I think it's hard to make a judgment call too on this sort of thing. I just saw a lot of conversation around it of like, can we fit another one of these in? Can we do another third-person shooter game? It's like, I don't know, man. If it's good, yeah, people will play it.
Yeah,
Who cares?
It's like, can your town fit another like pizza place?
Can your town have another McDonald's? Like, yeah, of course it can. What do you mean?
Okay. McDonald's may not be the analogy there because every McDonald's is identical. You know what I mean? Well, okay, maybe then it's the perfect metaphor. All right, you got me there. But yeah, no, it's like a pizza place. Some pizza places do good pizza. If there's 6 pizza places and a 7th opens and it's the best one, then yeah, there's always room for pizza.
Yeah, we got to go to the good McDonald's, not the bad McDonald's.
Yeah, that's true. There is a bad McDonald's, so that's true.
There's always a bad McDonald's. The worst McDonald's I've ever been to is Young and Dundas. I think it's Young Dundas. Either Young and Dundas or like Young and College or something in Toronto. I can't remember the exact intersection anymore, but it is brutal. It is always dirty. There's always people fighting outside of it. It's like, the funny Toronto accent that you hear all the time. Like, yeah, what are you saying, shorty? You trying to link up or what? You? That sort of accent. Every time I pass it, people are talking like that. It's so bad.
I used to go to when I was in San Francisco before I worked at GameSpot. I was just like broke. I was working an internship part-time at a film production company, and on my off days I would drive my then girlfriend to her college that she went to, and I would go to like the shittiest McDonald's in the in like the Excelsior, like South San Francisco. And I would be like, dressed for success. Like, I'd put on my like button up shirt and I'd be like sitting there with my laptop, like looking for jobs, applying for jobs. And there would be one time I saw a dude smoking crack in like the doorway. There would be like homeless people fighting in the McDonald's. And I was always very, tickled by the contrast there of like this young, naive, like whatever, 21-year-old Jeremy, and I'm like, I'm gonna find a job today. I'm gonna get a second internship, and then people are like, hey, look, can I drink in here? It's like 9 a.m.
Can I have $3? Obviously, hunting for a job, young man. You're like,
yeah, it was very funny.
Oh, only in the Northeast. Classic. Well,
Northwest. That was San Francisco,
Sorry, that was
baby.
San Francisco. My bad. Apologies. Well, there you go. Deadlock, the McDonald's of gaming. Check it out on Steam. I think you still need an invite code, right, to play it?
I think you still need an invite. Yeah, thank you to the member of the Noclip community who gifted me an invite. I won't say your name.
Yeah, I don't know if we could out whoever gave us access. They might get sued.
You
by
know
Valve.
who you are.
You know who you are.
And
Thank
we love you.
Fantastic. Anyway, that was for me. That wasn't for you. Other video games that we've been playing this week include Citizen Sleeper 2, one of the most exciting sequels, maybe for me, ever. It won our, what year was it? 2022 Narrative Sashimi Award.
Oh, yeah, that was the award.
Yeah, for the Noclip Games of the Year podcasts that we did. That's the title that we landed on. Just one of the tightest, most like meaningful narratives to me. The music for that game sets me off. The first one, Citizen Sleeper, it's one of the probably coolest games I've ever played. Just like vibe, gameplay wise, it's really interesting. It's like a tabletop RPG in video game form. And its sequel was announced, I want to say last year, and is finally playable now for us as a demo, because I don't know. Jeremy, did you get a chance to check this out at all, the Citizen Sleeper 2 demo?
Okay,
No,
I didn't, but I have a really good reason. It's not because I was like, I'll get around to it, and then I didn't. I have recently had an experience with a few games where I was very excited for them, and I was so excited that I couldn't wait for them to come out, and I played the demo, and I feel like when the game came out, I regretted playing the demo. That is not a universal experience. That is not how everyone responds to playing demos. I remember as a kid I played demos and I would just be like more excited for the game. But I'm already. It's kind of like watching the trailer for a movie that you already want to see, you know.
Yeah.
And
like the
then
teaser trailer, you're okay. You're usually that's the reveal trailer for this. You see it and you're like, okay, yeah. Tom Hanks is Geppetto. You're like, okay, sure. And then you watch the whole
I'm cool with knowing that Tom
Pinocchio.
Hanks is Geppetto.
Like he tells lies and then his nose gets long. You're like, I don't need to know that.
That's too much info.
No.
Yeah. Sometimes you watch a trailer or play a demo and it's like, oh man, this would have been like, this is like a delightful surprise. And then it ends, and then, you know, like there are some, we'll talk about Metaphor later, the demo for that, the progress carries over to the full game, which is part of the reason I want to check it out. But when that is not the case, sometimes it's like, oh, fuck, I like gotta play the first 2 hours of this game again.
Yeah, that is the struggle. I mean, as you know, the resident demo player for Noclip, I feel like I have this problem where I'll play something cool and be like, oh, that was great. I'm glad I played the first 45 minutes of that. And then you find out your progress doesn't carry over. And when you go to play it, it's the same 45 minutes again. And or your progress does carry over. Sometimes this is worse. It does carry over, but the demo was 4 months ago and you cannot remember what you did in the first 45. So it is a little bit of a struggle. But Citizen Sleeper 2, I think, works for a lot of reasons that have to do with what made Citizen Sleeper 1 so good. And what I think makes me look at Citizen Sleeper 2 and go, this is going to be such a big step up from the first game. Like, I think what we tend to say about game, I'll get to what Citizen Sleeper 2 does differently in a second, but I think what we tend to say about like a sequel to a game is I kind of just wish, and this is the most beloved thing for these kinds of games, is I kind of just wish they took the systems and the engine and just built on that again. You know what I mean? Like, Majora's Mask, I think for a lot of people, they really like that one. And it's, you know, it was built in such a small time frame. It used an engine and a set of systems that already worked, that were already good, and told a new and exciting story in that same world. Here, they've built systems on top of a great engine that does great work. I don't know how much has changed under the hood. Maybe it's the whole thing, but design-wise, there's a lot similar between Citizen Sleeper 2 and Citizen Sleeper 1 that allow them to do really interesting things narratively. So this demo for Citizen Sleeper 2 takes place in, it's called Hexport. The demo is called the Hexport demo. It's this region that, it's like a town built on the back of a floating hexagonal, like solar panel floating in space that's been abandoned. but it generates just enough energy to keep the city alive, right? But the game starts off with you in this larger area. Either that's Hexport and this is something else. No, I think the original area that you start off in is Hexport, and then very quickly you leave and you go to a different place with like a different Saturn name. I can't remember what it's called. But when you wake up, this is like narratively, I don't want to say too much. I will say that it's a continuation of the first game.
Oh, cool.
That's about it. That's all I'll say. But you wake up and there's another character who's like talking to you and asking what's going on, and there's like an interrogation that opens it. So like narratively, you get that sort of build up back to the world of Citizen Sleeper, this like sad, everyone fighting for themselves, but then also when you kind of crack everyone's shells and make those connections sort of world, it reintroduces you to that tone. And right away you can feel the team at Jump Over the Age and Gareth Damian Martin. The writing is just on a whole nother level from like everything else in games still. And you can feel it in the first 5 minutes. The descriptions of what it's like to wake up from a stupor, or the experience of like life ending for a machine, what that feels like for them, is just told so beautifully. There's just so much prose and so much like, it's just so flowery, but so like, it's not pretentious. You know what I mean? It's this level, and you know what it is. Like you played Citizen Sleeper 1. It's this like, It feels like somebody beaming ideas into your brain in this way that just is so impactful. And to speak past the writing, the demo, the gameplay, what makes Citizen Sleeper 2 different from Citizen Sleeper 1. And again, I think the part that makes it expand so broadly, the first game is very focused on your sleeper, exploring one area and learning the people's names and their interests and getting to know them and expending your dice. So Citizen Sleeper's gameplay loop is you get 5 dice per day to perform different actions. And you use these dice on different contracts, different, maybe it's going and eating food or going and having a conversation or trying to get credits or whatever, right? Doing what you can to survive. You have a limited number of options, but the dice rolls determine your success chance along with your stats that you have. So you could pick a starting class. In this, there's 3 of them again. It's like an engineer, hacker kind of thing, and then just like a core regular, the Mario class option, the like default stats. And all of these classes influence your ability to do different things easier or to make other things harder. You know this, Jeremy. I'm just re-explaining it to the audience who might not know anything about the game.
Yeah, no worries.
But the new things that they've built are these basically when you take a contract, instead of it being just a game that takes place in one area and really builds on that completely. I'm sure there's areas that you return to and areas that you spend a lot more time on, but here the contracts that you take that you can like go and do missions, you actually physically leave the spaceport that you're on a spaceship with your companion. I think their name is Seraphin. Got the name here. Yeah, Seraphin. And you leave the spaceport and you go to a totally new location. And part of it is bringing a crew. So now when you go and do these crew-based contracts, you bring characters with you that have their own individual stats and their own individual dice. So like,
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you have to think about your crew composition in a way that's a lot more intense than just like, oh, okay, I'm going to have these 5 dice. I'll do this thing. Right. And if I fail, that's just because I rolled bad dice. But here, you can actually have a lot more agency over your choices and also impact your choices a lot more in who you bring on these missions. So like one of the early ones that you get that I think might be optional is you go to this abandoned spaceship that has like a signal on it that's blinking out, and you have to go and investigate it for this guy who's like, oh, I'll give you this part that you need to get on your spaceship to leave. But only if you go do this contract or you give me like a number of credits that's not impossible to get a hold of, but would take you a long time and probably be really stressful. Because you're sort of on a time limit again, like the beginning of the first Citizen Sleeper. So you can go on these missions with a crew that you select. You meet there's 2 characters that you meet in this demo that you can bring along with you. And one of them sort of seems like they're scamming. This is what happened to me, is they introduce themselves in a moment where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to meet a new character. And you can tell them no, like, I don't want to bring you with me. That mission was so much harder without that person. I went back and did it again. When you have them, it's so much easier. But of course, the narrative through line of that, I think what makes it, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this, Jeremy, because we're coming up on, I just want to say this last point. I want to hear what you have to say about Citizen Sleeper and maybe your thoughts on this as a gameplay idea, because you think about this stuff a lot. I think what I like so much about Citizen Sleeper 1 and what I like so much I would argue even more about just from this demo, Citizen Sleeper 2, is the willingness that they have to let you fail. Like, and let you fail and have that be an interesting gameplay mechanic. Like, not just something where you fail and you get to try again, but you know what's coming. This is like failure is part of the game. It's a compelling reason to fail. Because when you fail here, it's not just like, there's a stress meter, right? In Citizen Sleeper 2, that's like, if you fail a roll or fail a check, then you have the chance for your stress to go up. And when your stress starts to get higher, you break dice if you rolled a certain number. So like it starts at 1, you keep getting more stress. Now if you roll a 2, that dice takes damage. 3, that dice takes damage. And then that dice is unavailable until you repair it at a repair shop. So if you're off on these contracts, but you take too long and you start getting stressed out, you lose dice and the mission becomes harder the longer you spend there. And then it becomes more expensive to get back to a good base point. So there's a lot more opportunities, a lot more consequences, narratively and mechanically, for failure. So I was interested in your thoughts on like what they do with Citizen Sleeper 1 and just in general designing for failure as a part of the game.
Yeah, that's really well. First of all, the dice taking damage thing is really interesting. It reminds me of this talk by Raph Koster, who is kind of a legendary game designer. Worked on I think he worked on some of the Ultima games. He worked I think he worked on Ultima Online. Worked on Star Wars Galaxies. Has worked on like a bunch of legendary games. And is just a very brilliant game designer. Has a really good book on game design that I think I have it open in a tab. Let me see if I can remember the name of it. I'll pull it up before the end of the podcast. But in this game design talk he gives, which is it's a very funny talk because he's constantly doing audience participation, and he's so invested in the idea of audience participation that he like won't move on with the talk until people answer stuff. So he's like, all right, somebody give me a mechanic, and everyone's like fucking silent for like 30 seconds, and he's like, you give me a mechanic, and the guy's like, I don't know, dice, like I don't know. But Raph Koster, he's a really good teacher as well, so he'll be like, yeah, dice, that's a great idea. What about like what can we do with dice that's like orthogonal to their purpose? Because dice, you roll, you get a number, they're just random number generators. What if you took dice and you built like a fort out of them? What if the dice were like representative of something that like wasn't the number? And it just like he has this very interesting concept of taking like commonplace elements of game design and kind of like recontextualizing them or something. Putting damage on the dice or having the dice be destructible reminds me of that, where it's like that's really really clever. It's and it's like it's clever in a way where it feels like much of Citizen Sleeper 1, it's clever in a way that feels like it could transpose so cleanly onto a tabletop experience, which is what I think is kind of genius about Citizen Sleeper 1's sense of minimalism, is that like it really does just feel like you're hanging out with your friend who's an insane writer, and they're just like, yo, hey man, I've been working, can I DM this like space adventure for you that's like sad as fuck? You're like, yeah, I'd love that. So yeah, no, but to your point about failure, I think Citizen Sleeper is one of those rare games that incorporates it into the storytelling, and it doesn't just say there's no hard fail state. I care. It's been a while since I played Citizen Sleeper. From my memory, there were a lot of places where you could have a suboptimal result, and the story would just carry on in a way where it just integrated that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there are very few. I mean, Disco Elysium is kind of the classic example where it's like failure is as interesting, sometimes more interesting than success. Like, I don't know, sometimes in Disco Elysium you're like, oh, like bust a dance move, and you roll like a 2. Yeah, it's like you fall down and shit your pants. You're like, that's hilarious. Like that's amazing.
Or like failing the karaoke check or whatever, the singing check.
Totally.
In the Whirling Rags.
Or in Anthology of the Killer, which you played yesterday, there are moments where you're being chased by like a serial killer or a monster or something, and if you get caught, it like brings you to another little narrative point where it's like the serial killer like dragged you into the other room and is like bumbling, like can't kill you because they're like too fucking stupid. And it's funny because it's like there is an inherent aversion in us as human beings and as players of games towards failure. Like even once I learned in Anthology of the Killer that there were these extra like narrative bits gated behind failure states, I still was like, I don't want to get caught though, because it's like, you don't get caught by the serial killer. That's not what you do in a game. Like he's chasing me. When someone chases you, you fucking run. You know, like I'm like a dog at the end of if you chase me, I'll run. So it's interesting to kind of like. Yeah, not only subvert that, but create equally valid pathways for failure, to create an opportunity to have a failure state that doesn't require you to, to as much as I like save scumming games where it's like, I'll try the thing, I fail, I do it over, I save scum, I get one like granule of success, and then I do another save state, and I try to just like claw my way forward like a mountain climber. I like that too, but it is gratifying and I think very forward thinking as game designers to create avenues for failure to be an equally valid path forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's not enough space to do that, especially in bigger games. Like the bigger and more expensive a game gets, the less willing it seems like, and it's a completely reasonable business decision, but it sucks for art, is like to make content that's not accessible to every player every time they play, right? The more stuff you make that the player can miss, the more time's being wasted on giving the player a unique experience, but also delivering stuff that maybe like, there's those endings in Baldur's Gate 3 that have like 0.03% of people have seen this or whatever. And, some some like production exec or whoever would be like, yeah, do we need to invest in even making that an option? It's like, yeah, why not? It's a fun thing that the storyteller wants to tell. So I don't know how deep it goes in Citizen Sleeper 2, but there's this sense of scale that comes from, and you see it the first time you pull up a contract and you can see the map. Because when you get a contract that's off the base that you're on, the hub that you're in, you click this little map screen and it pulls out and you can see like your little star that you're on, and then all these other things that you can click on. You can't click on them yet, but like that something's going to be there eventually when there's a contract or if there's a new location to go to. Again, I don't know how big it gets, but if it's like, I don't know, if there's like one place that has the depth of Citizen Sleeper 1, this is like my one concern that you don't see enough of in Citizen Sleeper 2, I think, because they're just introducing all these new mechanics and showing you what they have on offer. My only concern is that like, is there going to be something that has that level of depth from Citizen Sleeper 1? That's what I loved so much about that, was the recurring characters, seeing those places multiple times, going and feeding the cat every day in my apartment, a tool or a system, an option, an action that did nothing. Like, you just fed the cat, but for whatever reason, that routine of doing that was like part of the experience enough that I can still remember doing it, an action that was useless, or going and eating with the chef and like bringing him the new mushrooms every time. Like that was a really meaningful, important thing. So I hope that element exists in Citizen Sleeper 2. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. But just from what we're seeing here mechanically, or what I saw anyway, mechanically, the stuff they've introduced, even just the two characters they show you, Junie, Seraphin, there's another girl, I can't remember her name, but another character that you hang out with and her brother, they have this like, the brother's too overly possessive and she wants to sort of break out and do contracts with you. She's one of the people you can bring along on your ship, and she's really excited, but he doesn't like it. And like that dynamic, I want to see how that grows. That is not a knock on the demo or the game, because I haven't played the whole thing. I think it speaks to, like, they're so good at writing characters. They're so good at introducing people, places, concepts, conflicts, relationship styles that I just want to see expanded more and more. Like, I reached an hour point. It's very funny. I reached a point about an hour into playing the demo where I was like, okay, I've seen it. When you're playing a demo for something and you're like, okay, yep, that's it. That's all I needed to see. Thank you. I'm good. I'll wait until it's out. I closed it. And then I was like, fuck, I got to see how it ends. I reopened it. It was over like 2 conversations later. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah. So they knew exactly where to cut it off. They were like, this is all anyone needs. Like, I would love to hear your thoughts when the game comes out, because it sounds like you're not going to play the demo. I do not blame you.
I might cave. I don't know, dude.
That's what I was going to say, though, because like, to your point of playing a demo kind of sucks, because why would you want to replay the same content? But I think what Citizen Sleeper 1 did, and what this is doing, Citizen Sleeper 2, is doing so well, is like, oh, actually, I do want to go and replay that. Like, I did that with this demo. So I
can nail it next time.
Well, nail it, but like also see, what happens if I go down this route instead. Right. What happens if I, maybe your dice are better, but maybe you purposefully fail because you want to see the direction it goes. Citizen Sleeper 1 was so long where I was like, if I want to repeat a narrative chunk in the middle and see what happens with different choices, I'm not doing that. Like, I like that game, but that means I got to go through 15 hours of specific choices to get to that choice and then keep going. So
that's true. I guess that's what I mean when I say nail it. As much as you like, it's not like I want to get like the high.
Oh, you're saying like
Citizen Sleeper
get the
2.
thing you want.
I'm saying like my first playthrough of a narrative choice game is typically like, oh no, like whatever, Clementine died. I've never played the Walking Dead games. I don't know if that's not a spoiler. I haven't played those games. I'm just
We're good.
joking.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I've never played those games, so I'm not slipping a spoiler there. But yeah, when you play a game like that, I feel like it's oftentimes it's like, do I want to like load back an hour, or do I want to have a second playthrough where I save Clementine? I should stop joking about this. I feel like people are gonna get mad if I talk
This
about
time,
Clementine
kills. Never mind. I can't make that joke. I've played them. I can't make a joke. I can't.
You're
make
not allowed to. I'm allowed to because I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Clementine probably is so beloved that I shouldn't even joke about her dying. But also, there's a world in which she does die. People are like, stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Be crazy, man. You should play those games.
I will someday. I know
Someday.
they're good. I fucking have been inside of their office building after it closed for a documentary.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird to have not played them.
You should. They're good. That first one, man. The ending of the first season of The Walking Dead video game. Settle down, everybody. Is fantastic. It's just, I love every episode of that. I could play it 100 times. Really, I feel like I have. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Citizen Sleeper 2. I think, the demo for it anyway. I hope my concerns are assuaged, or whatever the word is. I don't know. I just said something that came to mind.
What is the word?
Yeah, okay, good, perfect. Thank you. When the full game launches soon-ish.
When is it? Yeah, is there a...
I don't think they have a hard date. Looks like it's next
2025.
year. Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully early, because I don't know how long I can wait. But I will, however long it takes. Take your time and make something
you
that
have
you're
to.
proud of.
What choice do you have other than to wait?
I could go in the hyperbolic time chamber.
That's true.
I will have access to that next week when I play Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. But you, listener, can check out the demo for Citizen Sleeper 2 and many other demos during Steam Next Fest that starts on October 14th, so on the Monday, and finishes on the 21st. So that'll be available for that on the Monday. You can check it out along with 3,000 other games that may or may not be good, and you can play those. And look out for our video highlighting some of the best ones from the event, launching probably that week, maybe a little bit later. And you can see all the cool things we have to show off. There are not like a wild amount of big things to highlight, but there are a very few strong video games that I'm excited to highlight in that video. So watch out for that when it drops next week, along with Citizen Sleeper 2. You can play it then. Or the demo anyway. Full game, 2025 at some point, I hope. Soon. Please. Anyway, more demos that dropped recently. Now for a game that is, I believe, out, right? Jeremy, Metaphor ReFantazio.
I think it'll be out by, let me check this.
By the time that this is live, right?
Yeah, it comes out in 2 days, so it should be out the day that this is airing. Let me confirm that. Oh, October 10th. Okay, so it'll be out by the time you hear this. As of time of recording, this is an unreleased game. Metaphor ReFantazio.
Did you have to play Meta 1, Meta 2, and Meta 3 to understand the game? That's a joke that I stole from somebody on Twitter. I'm going to go find out who it is so I don't sound like I stole a joke. Sorry, go on.
That's very funny. That's a wonderful joke, honey. Yeah,
I'm referencing my favorite comedian, Adam Sandler. No,
it's an Adam Sandler bit, actually. So this is an Atlas game. This is how do I even describe this? This is like it is spiritually a Persona game, but it is it's kind of taking the Persona formula, feel, aesthetic, the high production values of a Persona game. It feels so much like a Persona game that it is like embarrassing to not call it a Persona game, but it is definitely distinctly its own thing. This is kind of like a medieval fantasy version of Persona, I would say. It is taking a lot of familiar elements. There's like, at one point during kind of like, how in Persona, the protagonist will like get into, or one of the characters will get into a battle, and they'll be like, I'm going to get my ass kicked. I can't fight. They're like, but wait, there's like this deep within you. There is this power.
Yes.
And, they put the gun to their head and shoot it. They're like, Persona!
I do that when I play a Persona game too. I put the gun to my head.
Shoot yourself
in
the head. Goddamn.
Sorry, I like all of them, actually. That's a joke.
So there was even a moment where like I was like, oh my god, it's happening. The Persona moment is happening. Like, an hour into the demo or whatever. And I was like, I wonder, like, is there going to be a Persona? And he like, so this is, I won't talk about anything spoilery, like story wise, but this is just mechanical, has like the Persona moment. And I was like, are they called Personas? and I go to the menu and it's like archetype, and I was like,
Oh
okay,
my God.
the Carl Jung fans are eating now, you know, like
brother.
fucking.
I'm gonna quit my id. I'm gonna quit my super ego.
Super ego,
Yeah,
exactly. All you people with psych master's degrees are losing your shit right now. All you Carl Jung Red Book readers. But yeah, so anyway, it has, that's a deep cut reference for anyone who's read Carl Jung's Red Book. Carl Jung's Red Book is a book he wrote when he was losing his fucking mind. It's very interesting. You should check it out.
All right.
So yeah, anyway, metaphor ReFantazio. Sorry. I would love to talk about Carl Jung.
Not to break into Jungian psych.
I love Carl Jung for what it's worth. So anyway, yeah. So there is kind of the equivalent of personas. They're called archetypes. So if you like Persona, I think that this game it will instantly be recognizable to you as everything that you love about Persona. That being said, there are some interesting and meaningful differences. The setting obviously feels very different. I've never finished a Persona game. We've talked about this before. I've been playing Persona 5 for 7 years or whatever. like I play like a few hours of it every year, and I'm like, I think I really like this, and then I just stop playing.
You finished the second dungeon, then, give or take.
Yeah, I think I'm on the fourth dungeon or something.
Go.
Yeah, so I think by like 2030 I'll probably finish it, maybe. But yeah, so the fantasy elements of it are it's not just like a palette swap of a Persona game, is I guess what I'd like to communicate here. It's taking those elements and it's engaging with them in a very meaningful way. So not only like world building wise, but also it's doing some sort of like little subversive little tweaks on it. So the protagonist carries around a book with them, and people keep talking about this book, and there seems to be a framing device where there's like a narrator who talks directly to the player, and before you name the protagonist, they're like, hey, what's your name? And then it says like, you will name the protagonist later. So it's like asking you as the player what your name is. And so there is an interesting sort of like one layer removed framing device. And then this book that the protagonist character carries around it's like a fantasy storybook, but the fantasy storybook is about like a utopian version of the real world that you and I live in.
Whoa.
Which is interesting because it's like, because like we read books.
The book's about us. That's crazy.
And the book's about us.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
isn't that the never-ending story? Isn't that what that's about?
Is that what happens in the never-ending story?
I can't remember. There's a large white dragon there, whatever, that falls to the ground. That's all I remember.
Falcor.
From that. Yeah, Falcor.
All I remember is Falcor. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe they just ripped off the never-ending story, and I'm giving them too much credit, but. Let's assume that's not the case for a minute because I can't remember. So they're like in this like fantasy story. There's like towers of glass and like people are all of like one tribe because there's like different races in this world. Not like races like the way we misuse it in the real world, but there are people who are like
literal, like different like species,
like
of
elves
beings.
and dwarves style shit.
Right.
Yeah, where they're like there's like racism in there's actually I laughed so fucking out. It's like not a funny moment. It's such a not funny moment. But like when you first get to the main city, like 20 minutes into the demo, they clearly are trying to be like, there's like racism and fucked up shit in this world. And there's like a dog person who gets hanged for crimes. And then a bunch of like dog people come up to you and like beg for money. And it's like, okay, the dog people are like an underclass, right?
Right.
But they're being like, they have like little furry ears that look, they're like human looking, but they have little furry dog ears and they look like cosplayers.
Oh no.
Because they just have like, what do you call it? Like what do you call like a headband, right? With like dog ears on it. It kind of looks like they're just wearing those.
Like the dog ear headphones, like the
yes, yeah. Okay. And they're acting kind of like kawaii, like they're like, oh please, can I have some money? And I was like, the like cosplayers are like second class citizens in this world, or like furries. So I was like, all right, Jeremy, stop laughing. This is like an allegory about racism, like. Stop fucking laughing at that. They just hanged a dog, man. It's not funny, all right? But
Schindler's List for cosplayers.
It literally it felt a little bit like that, and so yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a cynical piece of shit, but I was having a good laugh about it. But if your soul is not tainted black like mine, I think this will really get you in your feelings.
Okay.
But seriously, the storytelling is good, and it does some very interesting world building stuff beyond the dog furries being an underclass. And Yeah, I just think they're taking like some. There's always the risk with fantasy RPG as like the tropey kind of theme. That's just going to be like, all right, yeah, the elves and the dwarves. Like I've seen it all before. I've read.
It's going to be racism again, but this time you're allowed to be racist because they're not
Yeah.
literal races from your own world. You could pick on the elves in this game because it's not technically racism.
yeah. Tolkien can write about the orcs, and he's like, and they're bad
lazy,
drivers, and
they collect
steal.
welfare. Yeah, like all right,
Exactly.
settle down,
like,
Tolkien.
All right, dude, come on, Tolkien. We know what you're fucking talking about here, and it's like 7
Put
different
the white hood
races
down,
bundled.
settle down, brother.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like that, but tactfully done. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's like it is interesting to me to see a lot of the Persona tropes of like the schedule stuff and in the insane level of like juice in every UI element. Every time you click a button, it's like shit moves and it's like animated. All the dialogue boxes are like bizarrely good looking and hand animated. So yeah, I will be curious to see. I'm definitely going to keep playing through the entire demo, which I hear is like 4 or 5 hours long, and your progress carries over into the full game. So it's just the first 4 to 5 hours of the game. But I'll be curious to see how it develops. I've played about 2 hours, but I play these games like a QA tester or something, where I'm just like. I'm like scouring
just
every
rubbing up
corner.
against all the walls, trying to see if
I'm
you
just
clip
like
into something.
feeling my way to like get through the invisible wall and break the game for some reason. So I've not made an insane amount of progress, but I've kind of seen like the first major plot points and stuff, and introduced myself to multiple characters. And
I think
stuff.
I actually got to the same point that you're at. I played the.
Oh,
demo.
you've played it?
Yeah. I
Okay,
appreciate you describing it because I'm great. Now the audience knows what the game's about. But no, I played probably to where you are. You got through a fight in a tower, and then you met an old guy who told you what your mission is. Yeah. Okay. So we're at like exactly the same spot. I also have that problem with these games where I'm like, is there a cat I can talk to on the ground? Where's the pet option for the dogs? So I was going through that same sort of thing, and I think you've nailed basically everything that's appealing about the game. I think I don't know what happens further from reading reviews. It sounds like it's a very politically driven, not just like, hashtag politics. This game's not woke, man. Or maybe it is, but like not in a derogatory way. It's like, it sounds like they're saying some shit and doing like, from my understanding, the main story thing is like doing something to a politician. So that's exciting that they're making that, although maybe not the best year to make that, your main plot point.
Dude, a Japanese game.
A Japanese game about killing a politician. And his name is Abo Shinzei. Crazy.
That would be amazing.
Holy
Dude,
shit.
This is a tangent, but the Shinzo Abe shit is so interesting. I feel like this is the wrong podcast to talk about this on, but fuck it. It's so wild that like usually an assassination happens and it's so anathema to what we value as civil human beings that we're like, it doesn't matter what that guy stood for. It's wrong to like kill a politician.
Yeah.
Japan was like, hold on, let's hear about. And he was like, yeah. Shinzo Abe was like, giving cutbacks to like a corrupt church and like, like this religious organization was like ruining people's lives and all this shit. And Japan was like, yeah, no, that you got a point. That's fucked up. Let's fix that. And there are like, I've seen like, apparently the dude gets like fan letters and stuff, and people are like, he's like a hero. And it's like,
to be fair, even if he sucked and like wasn't chill actually with it, you know what I mean? If he didn't have like good reasons, whatever that might mean, he'd probably still be getting letters, right? Like
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm sure Charles Manson got like married to some lady when he was in prison, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But I think it is very interesting that like, this dude sort of like transgressed the ultimate boundary, which is like killing someone who is seen as like a like a public figure or whatever. And Japan was like, hold on, let him cook for a minute. What's he up to? Didn't
America just go through the same thing? Didn't you guys just have the same? It didn't quite happen, but it was another one.
No,
of those.
because I feel like it's actually emblematic of the inverse, because I feel like there are a lot of people who see, I'm not gonna weigh in on whether people should assassinate. It's probably a bad idea generally. I would not do it. But it was interesting to see kind of the inverse play out, where it was like a person that many people in America recognize as an existential threat to a lot of people and to like civil rights and stuff. Someone tried to kill him, and everyone was like, even people who are very opposed to Donald Trump were like, that's not how we do it in America. Like you shouldn't do that.
We assassinate him at the voting box, at the fucking ballot box.
Yeah, exactly. So It was, I don't know, the Shinzo Abe thing is interesting because it's like they're like, yeah, well, I mean, you shouldn't kill people, but that guy, he kind of had a point. Like, it's just wild to see that that I feel like that's something you read about in like a history book, and you're like, wow, man, it was like the Wild West back then, not like Japan in the 2020s. You know what I mean?
I guess he wasn't currently the leader.
No,
right?
no,
So it was
but
a bit
he was like, still.
caused problem. I'm not arguing that like somehow made it more acceptable. Just like it wasn't like international world-ending politics stuff because it was like they killed the current leader of Japan. So it was probably a little bit different.
For sure, but still, like if someone shot Jimmy Carter or whatever and like
freed him from this mortal coil.
Okay, well now I feel like that would have less of a splash, maybe.
Like, you made it to 100. I don't know.
Oh, man, he had at least another few weeks left.
Jesus. Sorry,
but
we're going places on this episode. This is what happens when Danny leaves us alone.
This happens when Danny is not around to be like, although he I feel like he would appreciate this this line of inquiry. But yeah. Anyway, so it is interesting that they're like, what if there was a fantasy RPG where you like killed an evil politician, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean that's crazy. That could never happen in real life.
I can't name 3 times. I can't name one of those that started a world war. The first one, actually. Sorry, back to Metaphor. There was one other point I wanted to make about it. I think I don't really like Persona combat all that much. It's a little not my flavor. It's turn-based, and I like turn-based, but I feel like the weakness stuff, hard transition out of dead politicians, or almost dead politicians. Sorry.
What was Shinzo Abe's elemental weakness?
Oh, fuck. Apparently it was bribery from the sounds of it, or blackmail. Let's check his logbook.
Roasted his ass.
Yeah, boom. Yeah, take that. Sorry, fuck. Okay.
Delete the podcast, dude.
not a big fan of the elemental weakness system. I don't even like it in Pokemon. I can't do this. Never mind. The game
is
keep going. All right. I'll find a way. Let me keep walking back.
Compose yourself.
So Metaphor ReFantazio, developed by Atlas Games and published by Sega Games people. The combat system for Persona, not my favorite thing. I think Persona 5 streamlined it by adding a lot more stuff that you can do in the middle of combat, like shooting your guns, and Royal removed the ammo limitations, and there's still that looking for the weakness stuff, but that's like my least favorite part of it. It's like solving the puzzle, right? And this looks like it still has the same sort of thing, which I'm not super excited about, but it also looks like you get the analyze option right away. I haven't, again, gotten further, so I can't say whether or not that's something you can do, but the thing that I like about it a lot is the open world stuff. So when you're walking around, right, you see the enemies, and you actually see the enemies, where in older Personas you would just see like a fucking thing, a blob on the screen, and you'd hit it, and if you hit it, you get to do your attack, and if you don't hit it, you don't get to do your attack. If you get hit, well then fuck, enjoy a whole turn and you get your ass beat. This has the same thing. It follows the same sort of structure, but they've pumped so much more juice into this. Like, holy shit, starting a fight, so you can like do your swing and you get the stunned attack and everything, but just like when you hit them and then it slows down and you like hit the Y button, it's like the music kicks up and you got that, apologies to all Italian people, you got that guy that's going like in the background with the battle.
Dude, the music
music
is crazy.
It's so
the music goes
good.
crazy.
I love it. So I don't know. Everyone knows that the Persona games are these incredibly juicy RPGs that are like, they live and die by their aesthetic, right? If you don't dig the vibe of a Persona, it's probably not going to be for you. Like, I wasn't huge on P3R, just because I don't really like that vibe of it. I don't like the sort of dreary, sad, dystopian concrete jungle. I like Persona 4 because it's like small town, whodunit murder mystery kind of thing. And I like Persona 5 because it's really flashy. I think Metaphor, it transcends even past that, because I don't even if you don't like the fantasy medieval era stuff, I feel like just the juice is just so good. It doesn't even matter. Like, it's every button press feels fun because there's so many flashes and colors and everything. It's just, I love when the dopamine is streamed into my brain. It's like, I don't know. I can't wait to play more of it. It's going to be fun. And like you said, it's out now, right? It drops on the 10th. So for people listening to it, you can take us on your adventure. I hope you're listening to this while you're grinding out whatever the first couple enemies are called. Aren't they called like, let me look it up. I don't want to get it wrong.
They have like Latin names.
Yeah, they do.
It was very funny. Fuck, I lost my train of thought. You just said something that I triggered a thought in my brain. I was gonna say, like, I agree with you. Like, a lot of Persona games kind of don't even necessarily like. I feel like I'm not a Persona person. I feel like it's not like I play these games and I'm like these were made for me. But there's something about them where they're just so like they're like loving. Every element of them is so lovingly crafted that it's like you see someone's master woodworking and you're like, yeah, I don't give a shit about woodworking. But even you as a non-woodworker can be like, holy shit, he like carved like a rose into that. Like that's insane. Yeah. Like it just feels like it is so. Every element of it is so curated and yeah, I don't know. There's something I also like don't particularly connect with some of the writing in the Persona games. I feel like it's like, you know, it kind of feels like I hate to use this term because I feel like it's an overused way to like be dismissive towards Japanese media, but it feels like anime to me a lot of times where it's like it feels like sort of just like melodrama and like some of the dialogue feels like disposable or some characters kind of just feel like they're there to play a role rather than fully fleshed out human beings. I feel like the Persona games do have legitimately good characters that are always very charming.
Yeah.
And it bypasses my cynicism about some of the like cheesier kind of like tropier stuff in it where it's like, oh yeah, what is this guy gonna like save me now? And then he comes in and he's like, this was that guy giving you trouble? And I'm like, oh my God, he's so charming. Like I'm just like,
wow, I kind of want to hang out.
Oh my
with
God.
him. I want to increase my social link with him.
I want to bond with this guy.
What's his archetype? Is he a rising Sagittarius or what's his archetype?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there should, I don't know if that's ever happened. I've played 3, 4 and most of 5, so I feel like I would remember it, but I don't think anyone's ever made that joke of like, oh my God, he's death. Like he's so death. I can tell.
he's basically the fool.
Yeah. Oh, he's so fool. He is definitely Joker. I can tell. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know where that voice came from. Anyway, that's the game. Can't wait to play it. It is and looks like a lot of fun. So yeah.
It's a good demo. Also, if you're unconvinced, I assume the demo will still be available once the game is out.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure.
No,
But,
probably. And it carries over, like you said. So
yeah.
even if
if you want to play the first 5 hours of a $70 game or whatever before you buy it, that's very reasonable.
Yeah, it's coming out on everything, right? It's coming out on PC, PS5, and Xbox.
No idea. I'm so bad at looking that shit up. I feel like every podcast,
we have to like
else is,
check the
prepared
platforms.
with the facts. I'm just a gamer, man.
It's just, we own everything. We don't care about it. If it's on Steam, then that's all that matters, right?
That is not true.
We own everything.
PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X, Series S, Microsoft Windows, whatever that is.
Is that like one of those personal computers that people use?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think it might be on Mac OS.
Okay,
OS
here's a
X.
question for you,
That's
Jeremy.
a joke. That part's a joke. Yeah.
No, I think maybe you're right. Who knows? We could find a way to make it happen. You hear that, Atlas? Is it on Game Pass?
I don't fucking know, dude.
No,
I
just take a guess. Do you
shit.
think it's on Game Pass?
I don't know.
No?
For maybe I don't know what goes on Game Pass. I know you
don't fuck with that, but
I don't fuck with that, and I'll tell you why. I feel like it is a great way to try out a bunch of different games without paying a ton of money. But personally, it has this effect on my brain where I'm constant. It makes me feel like less invested in the games that I'm playing, and maybe that is a personal failing of mine. Maybe I'm a weak-willed individual.
Nope.
But to me, when I was a kid, you go out to the fucking to Babbage's or to the Funko Land, and you buy like Earth Defense Force on the Super Nintendo, and that's all you got, motherfucker. Like you better enjoy. You better find a way to enjoy it, because like. I'm not driving you back to the Funko Land. It's in fucking Peabody, and that's Danvers.
We'll take that back to the Blockbuster next week and get you a new game when we go back to Blockbuster. I'm not going back on Sunday. We went on Saturday already. It's a 45-minute drive.
So you better enjoy Battletoads, because that's all you got.
You better enjoy Shadow Hearts, because you thought that was a Kingdom Hearts spinoff. You dumb little idiot me.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't fuck with subscription services because I like to put a little pressure.
No,
on
I
myself.
totally get what you're saying. The only reason I asked that question was because me and another buddy, we were talking about, oh, this game's on Game Pass, right? And we were joking about it because it's like, it looks like it is. Xbox is doing the marketing for it. It's been at every Xbox showcase. It like very heavily. So the fact that it's not on Game Pass is wild. We both assumed it was. And then Jeff Keighley, in his eternal wisdom, tweeted about the game being like, check it out on Game Pass, and then deleted the tweet and was like, coming to Xbox, which I think just speaks to the fact that if Microsoft is really pushing a game, it probably means it's going to be on Game Pass. So it's weird that it's not. I don't know. I think it's bad that a company, for the reasons that you're saying about why you don't really mess with Game Pass, I think it's bad that they've put themselves in a position where if they are ever speaking positively about something, the assumption is you can play it bundled with 100 other games for $20 a month or whatever. That's bad optics for them and bad for the people who make the games, because people are just going to wait. You see Xbox advertising a game, it's probably going to be on Game Pass. You're not going to buy it. And then the release window passes and, well, I forgot to buy it, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, to be clear, Game Pass has some positive, effects. Like, I don't mean to like shit on it. I think that there are indie games that get like what was it? I think Pentiment one of those games that was on Game Pass, and a bunch of people probably would never have checked it out.
Even Josh Sawyer said it probably wouldn't have happened without Game Pass, right?
So. Exactly. So like, there are dimensions of it that I think are enabling good games to be made. I just personally, I need to like. I need to go to Funko Land and buy Earth Defense Force on Super Nintendo in order to get invested. This is if anyone out there has been to Funko Land, hey, everyone in the comments, post your favorite fucking store that doesn't exist anymore that you went to as a child to buy video games, and I'll cry over them.
I can't think. Yeah, I don't know. See, I'm just old enough.
Yeah, what'd you go to?
That's
Did you have you had probably like EB Games?
Yeah, well now it's GameStop, I guess, so that's the one thing, but it was like I said before, it was EB Games until COVID, so it's not like I really missed anything. I wasn't shopping there when it became GameStop. I don't think there's anything like that. There were a lot of places called Microplay, but I think that's still a thing. See, that's the problem with having these conversations with you guys. It's like, hey, you remember a thing? And I'm like, I don't know, everything that I'm nostalgic for is still a popular thing or exists.
You're not even that much younger than me.
I'm not.
How old are you?
I'm 29, but like.
That's like, we're like the same age.
I know, but I feel like there's like, because you're what, 33, right?
33.
Yeah. That's
so
4 or 5.
What, you're like 58 or something?
Yeah, you're what? I got it bang on, all right? Give me a break.
Yeah, I know.
There's like this weird, it might also be cultural, but like this weird divide where you and Danny and Frank's only
he's like 32 or something.
Yeah, he's only 3 years older than me. Have this like weird social, like total divide and like things that we're into, things that we're nostalgic for. It might also be because I grew up without anything for a very long time. I was like super poor growing up. So like I had a Wii and Wii Sports and that was it for like 6 months. So I didn't really play a lot of video games and everything. So whenever we have these conversations, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I shot when I was 15, I shopped at EB Games, and 15 was 14 years ago as opposed to like, 17, 18 years ago when things were different and better. The world was a better place.
I can still, like, I have such distinct memories of shopping for video games as a kid that, like, I can still, sounds like a thing that, like, a fucking psychotic person would say. If I think about Babbage's hard enough, the game store that was at the mall, I can, like, smell what it smelled like at Babbage's.
That's awesome.
I feel like that's like a fucking psychotic thing to say.
No.
But there was like the smell of like, I don't know if it's like the plastic wrap that they used on PC games or something, but I swear to fucking God, I could like smell Babbage's in my mind. It sounds like something somebody who's having a stroke would say that right before they pass out.
Yeah, everything that you remember smells like burnt toast. That's really weird.
Does it smell like Babbage's in here? And then I dropped dead instantly. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I have very weird, like, strong sense memory. To me, that was like the fucking, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but like games culture was less accessible, less mainstream, less omnipresent in the world when I was a kid. So being really into games when I was like 7 years old or whatever, going into a game store, like I just liked, as like a small child, I would just like go up to the cashier and be like, "Have you played Diablo 2?" They'd be like, "Yeah, that game's cool." I'd be like, "It's really fun." Like I just fucking like, I just wanted to like be immersed in games as a child, and there was very few vectors for that other than go in to buy them or whatever.
Yeah, no, I get that. I didn't really have the opportunity. I wish I did. I think the closest thing I had was going on the internet forums and talking about games and pretending I wasn't 11 years old. I'd watch game trailers on YouTube or whatever. I'd be like, whoa, like literal game trailers of the website, and be like, whoa, Stuttering Craig, I hope that guy doesn't turn out to be an asshole. So you see all these clips and stuff, and it got me excited for video games. But in terms of like social parts of it, or like going to buy games, it was like, I don't know, man. The closest thing I have to your smell though is I don't remember what the Blockbuster was supposed to smell like, but it's right next to a Subway, or was right next to a Subway. So whenever I think of Blockbuster,
which is the strongest smelling business of all businesses.
I don't know what they put in the fans in the Subways, but holy shit, they're so strong. If you're in a business 2 doors down from a Subway, it stinks like bread. It it is insane how strong the smell from a Subway is, man.
It's being the Blockbuster next to the Subway is like having the apartment next to someone who like is a weed dealer. You know what I mean? Like it's like
you go to work and they're like, "Are you high again?" And it's like, dude, it's Jeremy's next door. What do you want from me right now?
They're smoking oregano next door, dude. Yeah, like I don't know what to do.
Devil lettuce. What do you want me to say?
The Italian herbs and cheese bread is just baking all day, and I can't do anything about it.
They're constantly making flatbreads, man. I don't know what to do about it. All right, fuck. Ugh. Have you seen, by the way, I hate to get Subway posting in the podcast, but have you seen the foot-long other things they're doing?
No, I haven't been to a Subway in this forever.
Okay, I haven't either. You couldn't pay me to go to Subway. But like I see because it just makes me think of Blockbuster. And I see the Subway signs outside of the stores, and now they have this like foot-long cookie.
What?
Are you Googling it? Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? I'm on the Subway website right now. Let's see what we got here.
If you're still listening to the podcast, thank you for being here.
You're a real fucking real one.
You're a homie.
Dude, they have like a box of Subway sandwiches for catering. I feel like if someone was like, yeah, hey guys, lunch, I got lunch today, don't worry about it, I'd be like, oh, holy shit, that's so nice of you.
Yeah.
And they showed up with a bunch of Subway already pre-cut sandwiches, I'd be like, this guy is a fucking asshole.
I suddenly have food poisoning from looking at the Subway sandwich.
Yeah. Oh yeah, footlong churro, footlong pretzel, footlong. Oh my god, the footlong cookie looks vile, dude.
Yeah, give me that Fookie.
Oh my god, a pepperoni and cheese footlong dipper. This is like, okay, Subway. I think we figured it out. I think Subway is like your friend who smokes too much weed. Like they don't have like a casual. They're not just like sipping a glass of wine. It's a lifestyle for them,
right?
And it's taking its toll on them cognitively. And I say that as someone who enjoys cannabis. I feel like if you go over Subway's your friend, and you go over his house, and he's like, "Yeah, man, can I get you a snack?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm actually really hungry. I'd love that." And then he brings out a cookie that was baked in a banana bread pan that's a foot long.
Yeah, you're
like,
right.
Dude,
you're right.
What
this
are you
is
doing
totally
with your
a high
life?
guy snack. I think it might have been like a daily or like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm saying that like it's a special thing and not like something that'll give you a stomach bug. They were serving these foot long cookies with toppings on them, and you could get like potato chips and
no, dude,
like pickles and hot peppers on the weird cookie bun things. I don't know, man. It's the kind of food you buy when you're high or drunk, but like you forgot that McDonald's existed and wanted to spend $12 and throw up still. I don't know. No shade on Subway. We're never getting the Subway sponsorship now. We're so screwed.
I feel like that's after the whole Subway Jared thing, I don't want to be Subway sponsored anyway.
That's fair.
Know? It's poison pill.
What's their slogan now? Sorry, I'm so stuck on Subway. We can move on.
Let's see. Right. Subway corporate slogan. I mean, let's see. How deep are we in the podcast? It's an hour and a half in. We still got some listener emails, but
we'll get there. I promise.
I think they're still Eat Fresh. I'm pretty sure.
Are they really?
Yeah, the longtime Subway slogan "Eat Fresh" is intended to indicate that their toppings are indeed fresh. It's a reassurance because you're like assuming they're not fresh, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Subway.
They should change it to still fresh. Like it's like
Subway. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, we're still here. Okay, cool. Well,
all right. Well,
Subway,
Metaphor ReFantazio available now.
It's better than Subway. I'll tell you that much.
That's true. It involves the murder of a politician, so it's automatically better than Subway. No questions asked. Grab it now.
Amen.
Yeah, but we also have, like Jeremy said, some listener emails. Thank you for sending them in. If you want to send your emails in, have them read on the pod, have us have lengthy conversations about them, you can send them to podcast@noclip.video if you want to send us an email, or you can go to our Discord for patrons, drop it in there. You have a podcast chat. Leave them in the YouTube comments. Whatever you want to do, we'll get around to them, I promise. We love answering these questions. This is honestly very quickly become my favorite thing to do on this podcast, is to answer these questions.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's like things we would never think to talk about, but they yield the best conversations.
Well, also things we never have like an excuse to talk about. I mean, also we just talked about Subway for like 10 minutes, so maybe we could just talk about whatever we want, whenever we want.
I feel like we could just kind of go anywhere.
Nothing's stopping us. So thank goodness we have these questions, because you're right. We would never think to talk about them necessarily unless they come up in our own topics. Anyway, Stephen Camburn asks, hello crew. When a game offers you a character creator choice, what do you gravitate towards creating? Is it one, we might have an option that's not these three. Is it one, a character that resembles yourself? 2, a character that fits the game's aesthetic, or 4, a completely messed up character. I don't know what happened to 3. P.S. Video game book shout out. Simon Parkin, Death by Video Games. Kind regards, Steven. It's a good question. Jeremy, what about you? Do you have an option, or do you want me to spout mine?
I'll rattle mine off real quick.
Okay.
I go 2 ways with character creators. I actually got so stuck on this with Metaphor ReFantazio because they're like, name your protagonist. And there's, you know how there's always in JRPGs, there's like a default name that's like Jameo or like some fucking nonsense name. And you're like, Jameo.
That's what I got on my Subway sandwich.
Jameo.
Like a Jameo.
Nice.
Yeah.
Eat fresh. I feel like I need that option to fall back on in case I can't think of anything. And Metaphor ReFantazio did not have a default name. And I swear to God, I sat there for 25 minutes being like, just like doing syllables, trying to find like a name that's not a real name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just sounding it out, just feeling it out. I'm terrible at names, so I feel like the reason I bring up names is because I feel like it's indicative of my bipolar philosophy on character creators. I either make someone who is like so immersed, like someone who's like could exist in that world and feels like an asset from the world, and their name is like perfectly in keeping with the world's aesthetic, or their name is like Bustos, and it's like a joke or like a dick joke, and their face is like green, and I take every slider and I just max it
all
out.
sliders to the right, baby.
Like a fucking freak.
That's right. Yeah, that's the funny way to do it. I wish I did the same thing. You want to know what I did for Metaphor? Possibly the nerdiest thing that you should never do when you're playing one of these games. I Googled what the canon names were.
There are canon names.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. I just saw it on IGN.
How come they're not in the character? How come they're not in like the thing as the default?
I don't know. I thought that would be the case, but
How would you know?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know where they got it from. I just looked it up. I was like, okay, there's a couple.
I didn't have the manual.
I know. I didn't have the Prima guide. I didn't know.
I
what
bought
to
it
do.
used in a fucking Blockbuster box.
Some kid wrote his name all over. It was just black Sharpie all over all the information. I didn't know what to pick.
The only save file was Dave.
Yeah, fuck. All caps too. We didn't even use the lowercase letters. Come on, Dave. It's right there. Yeah, but for picking like a character creator, I usually try to recreate myself. I did for a long time, which when I was younger was tough because I had like, I could grow an afro. I kind of can still, but
hell yeah.
it takes a lot longer. So I used to have a very loose afro, and getting that to work in games was like, that meant I had a hard brown blob on top of my character's head that you could call hair if you kind of squinted at it.
It's like a gumball machine.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's true. But lately I've just been like coming up with a character. Like for Starfield, I imagined the background for a character, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons, where I was like, this guy worked on a freighter and like his whole life. And then he realized how much he missed his daughter, and he came back and he got a cut on his eye for when he was using a welder on something outside of a spaceship and all that. Like I try to come up with all that shit and try to make a character around that, which is fun, but it means that when I start playing the game, I'm like, Alonius the Fourth would never do this. Like, and it's like, I can't make that choice for Alonius. He would never do these things.
Yeah.
So it's the tough part. But yeah, I usually just, if I can't find an interesting character, I just default to myself, which, kind of boring, but.
I'm always like embarrassed to make myself. I don't know why. Is that weird? I feel like I don't want people to call me Jeremy in a video game because it's like, it feels too real or something.
Yeah,
where I'm like,
I get that.
It's like what's his name? Bertolt Brecht was the playwright. People use the term Brechtian to talk about like theater that reminds you you're watching a play, where like there's someone gets murdered in the play and the protagonist turns to the audience and is like, "But how do you, as the audience, feel?" I feel like I'm having a moment like that every time someone says my name.
Yeah.
And also, when I was a child, most video games for the Super Nintendo only had like a 5-letter cap for names. So every character I made was Jerem because they couldn't fit my name.
See, I got lucky. I got the Jesse with no eye, so I didn't have to compromise.
There you go.
See?
You know what I do a lot of times is I do Jem, Jem, like Jem Finch, because that was my nickname growing up.
Jem Finch?
No, just Jem.
Just Jem. Okay, I was like, what?
No, not. Atticus Finch is not my father.
Oh no.
I'm not a character from To Kill a Mockingbird, but Jem was that's what my parents called me and stuff.
Wild. That's yeah. I wish there were more like interesting options for character creators that weren't exclusively visuals. Like I feel like the ones that are too detailed tend to be like I'm just wasting my time adjusting cheekbone height. Like I just don't care. That's not for me.
Yeah.
I wish there was more like narrative choices for character creators.
I feel that. I also feel like most games with character creators are like action fantasy RPGs where it's like, oh, I spent an hour on like Alonius the Fourth, and then it's like level 1 helmet, and you never see his face again.
Yeah, like Dark Souls, right? Or like Elden Ring.
Yeah.
You spend forever making this beautiful creature, and then all of it, or disgusting creature if you put all the sliders to the right, and then you just slap a helmet on them. You're like, okay, you're staring at their back for the whole game.
It is kind of a delightful moment though when you do that, and then you take your helmet off 100
and you're like, oh my god, that's what
and you're like, oh my god, I forgot he was like a fucking frog.
Yeah, I can't wait to. I'm not okay. Total tangent from the character creator conversation, but it's got me thinking about it. Are you interested at all in Dragon Age Veilguard?
I don't know. I've never played a Dragon Age game, so I don't know.
So me neither, but I don't know why. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I guess I played a little bit of Inquisition, like the first 2 hours maybe, because I thought it would be interesting, and it wasn't. And then I played the beginning of Dragon Age 1, because everyone says it's a masterpiece, and then I was like, I'm bored. But for whatever reason, man, I've seen gameplay of this, and I'm like, this. It's got a character creator that people were being annoying about, which just reminded me of the game.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. The action looks pretty solid. There's not a lot of like. This year feels like it's very JRPG focused for big AAA games. Like Square Enix has been putting out a lot of big stuff. You know, Atlas is doing a lot of great things. Sega's been they're going to have another Yakuza game coming out soon, so they're kind of taking over the space. So it's cool to see a Western action game in the RPG space, and it looks like fun. I don't know, just reminded me. I was just curious if you had any experience with it. You're maybe the only person I know personally who I thought maybe had played the games. So
I think my only, I'm trying to remember. I'll have to dig up this video. I did a video at GameSpot one time where someone else was working on a video that was like about, I think it was like a multiplayer mode for a Dragon Age game, like a side mode or something.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to, this was probably 2014 or whatever. So I think I'm 99% sure it was a Dragon Age game. And they got sick or like got pulled off on another project, and they're like, Jeremy, can you like finish this video? And I had to like make a guide for like, this is the best strategy, but I'd never played the game. So I just was like, I don't know what the best strategy is. I'm fucking like, I've literally never played these games. So it was very embarrassing to bumble my way. Because, you know, when you work at like a fucking games journalism outlet, you're like, all right, can I budget like 3 full work days to learn the game?
Yeah.
And they're like, nah, just make it. And I was like, okay, so sorry if you followed the strategy. Actually, I had a funny moment with an old GameSpot video recently. I replayed Dark Souls 2 for the first time in a decade. And you know how in Dark Souls games, there's like the starting gift or whatever?
Yeah.
So I looked up a guide for the starting gifts, and there was a GameSpot video, and I forgot that it was a video that I made at GameSpot a decade ago. So the video started up, and I was like, wait, that's my voice.
You're like, oh, who's talking?
Who's this asshole? Yeah. No, but it was very surreal because I just like it was just some fucking video I made one day in like a couple hours or whatever, and it was very strange.
That's strange for me in the other direction, because obviously I don't have any like GameSpot. 12-year-old GameSpot employee Jesse Garasha. But I do have moments where I'll go back and watch something or look for something on the internet, whether it's a gaming video or an article or whatever, and I see your ass, or not your ass, but I see your ass, and I see
my ass
like,
is on the internet.
Well, you know what, man? You're on some good websites. Or I see you, or I see Danny, or I see Frank, and I'm like, I know these guys. What are they doing?
Where did you see me on the internet?
Famous? I think I was looking for, it might have been your Star Wars Battlefront 2 video, right? Or Battlefront 1?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, where you did the video about the map. I was like looking for footage of that map, and I was like, holy shit, that's Jeremy Jane.
That's very funny.
I know.
Yeah, it is very bizarre. I had a friend hit me up from high school one day, like 7 years after I made a GameSpot video about Battlefield 2. They were like, I saw you in a video on the internet. I was like, what do you mean? I'm not in videos on the internet. And they're like, no, I swear to God. And they sent me a Battlefield video that I made in like 2013 or something.
I know exactly what you mean, but you're also in like 100+ in the last 2 years videos on the internet.
That's true. Well, now I'm in more stuff. Yeah. But before like pre like 2020.
Yeah. Before the Loop Hero video, right?
Yeah. My ass wasn't in shit. I was totally behind the camera. So this is a more recent thing for me the last few years.
Well, thank you for being a part of it, because I think you make this thing so special and important, and people needed to see more of you. You're a smart guy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the question, Stephen. That was great. I also looked up the book recommendation, Death by Video Games. It is on Amazon if you want to buy it on there for $1 if you want the audiobook with the membership for audible.com/we don't have a sponsorship. That's not the code. The full title is Death by Video Game, Danger, Pleasure, and Obsession on the Virtual Frontline. Actually sounds pretty interesting. It's a good title. Might have to check that
That
out.
is a good title.
Yeah. Hardcover for $12. I'll have to pick that up. We have another question here from Austin Salisbury. Austin says, hey guys, a little while ago you were talking about museums, and one I think you'd all love is the Museum of Mechanics Lockpicking. Ooh, I've heard of this. It's a game on itch.io that curates every kind of lockpicking mechanic in games with the intent of helping game devs explore mechanics and see how they've progressed over time. I stumbled on this while I was studying my master's in curating, and you get a master's in that? And I just thought that it's an incredible intersection of games preservation media while also being a helpful teaching tool for aspiring game devs. I love hearing you all talk about preservation, especially the Noclip archive, which I think is a hugely important project, and thought you'd all vibe with this too. Up the boys. Excuse me? Austin. Thank you for sending that in and reminding me that, yes, this is a thing. I'll have to Google the title here again, but it's Museum of Mechanics Lockpicking. Yeah. I remember hearing about
I've heard of this, but never played it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at screenshots right now. It is literally like a museum room, and there's a bunch of, what do you call them? Pedestals with like locks on them floating above them.
Oh, yeah.
And each one just is like Thief, Deadly Shadows, Oblivion, this one says Thief, Deus Ex, No One Lives Forever, so presumably those three have the
Very
same
similar ones, yeah.
lockpicking mechanic. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting idea. It's like I would like to see this with other mechanics too.
Yeah,
but
I was just thinking, yeah, what else would you do?
It's bizarre though, because I was thinking about this with the Silent Hill 2 remake, that like could you have like a combat mechanics museum? And I feel like it would be. Like it would. I feel like for lockpicking it works because lockpicking is so self-contained. But for other mechanics, it would be interesting to see because it's like I feel like if you just played the combat from like an old survival horror game out of context, you'd be like, "Well, this sucks."
Yeah.
You know, like Silent Hill 3 is like a great game, but if I just played the combat in like a gray box, I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, sure." Like I guess I could hit this guy with a pipe clumsily or whatever.
It's a bit like if you played Devil May Cry and just hopped into the arena mode or whatever, right? Like if you just hopped into, or Final Fantasy 16 has that too, where you can just go and test out all the combat mechanics without playing the game first. You're like, oh, okay, sure. There's a launcher.
Yeah, context is very important. That's why the lockpicking one is like the perfect pick for it. Yeah. That's not a pun. I'm sorry. I feel like it is the kind of thing where you could just like do it in isolation. Yeah, I want to play this. This is cool. I feel like these would be the lockpicking one and like if there were other mechanic versions of this would be good like teaching tools.
Yeah.
Like I feel like because it's interesting to see there's this feeling I get, especially with all like the remake discourse happening right now. I feel like sometimes people talk. I literally, you may notice we're not talking about Silent Hill 2 remake this week. I think we'll talk about it next week when Frank is back. I have mixed feelings about remakes generally, so it'll be an interesting discussion next week. But the way some people talk about remakes is like, finally, like this old dog shit game is playable in a new generation.
Yeah.
And I think it's it's like it's important to recognize that games, while they do improve over time in some ways, just because something feels more like a contemporary game doesn't necessarily mean it is an improvement. And that games are such a weird thing where it's like sometimes things that feel more frictional or janky can be effective in ways that things that feel more responsive and intuitive don't achieve the same effect.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to have a thing like this where it's like isolating mechanics and putting them in a museum to just like interface with, because I think it might be illustrative of the way that that you might try an old version of a mechanic and find that it is more interesting than the newer incarnation of it, even though the unconscious assumption might be that this is getting better and better and better, obviously, as more people do it or whatever.
Well, then there's also the quality of life stuff that I think comes with newer games, and like the sort of thing that I think it's like almost a juxtaposition of quality when people go back and play an older version or an older game in general, and they realize, oh, like for me, the big thing is autosaves. Whenever I go back and play an old PC game, I'm like, oh shit, there's no autosaves. That's something that
you die like 3 hours in and start the game over.
Fuck, that happened to me with System Shock. I want to say 2. I got really far and didn't save. I finished the game eventually. I love the ending of that game. So stupid. But to the point, I realized, oh shit, this is a common thing in these old games where they don't have autosaves, because if they did, all games would take a 3-minute pause randomly to spin up the hard drive so it doesn't make any sense to do that. And I don't blame the old games. And I also think it, like, when you figure it out, when you get used to it, it's just a different thing, man. You'd start looking at the games differently, not just the old ones, but like current ones. You start thinking of, like, you know, horror games. I think older horror games have the capacity to be scarier because there's that tension of, like, lost time. It's a little annoying, I think, if you lose like 3 hours of game because it's something you're not used to, but they do become scarier because of that, right? Like, they become more stressful because you're going to actually lose something tangible, which is your own time, as opposed to just like a resource or something. So there's levels to that sort of thing. I don't know. I'm totally, like, we're not getting into the remake conversation. I just want to say, I'm with you. We've talked about this in private. We agree on basically all of this. I think the stuff that matters to people when it comes to playing a new version of something that's old typically are the kinds of things that I think are the same stuff that we point at and say these new games are bad. These new gaming has become too, you know, sanded over and too clean and whatever. But then when they do it for an old game, it's like, oh, okay, actually that's kind of nice. So it's like a conflict of criticisms. It's like we're upset when it's happening with current things, but then an old thing gets it and it's like, oh, actually that is like a nice inclusion. It's like, oh, that's good actually. I don't mind.
Yeah,
it too
it's
much.
weird. It's like I feel like it is a thing that games as a medium are still figuring out, the way that that frictional elements can be very important.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's good friction and there's bad friction, you know? Like, sometimes I'll play a game where it's like, this story moment is really serious and your character has to walk slow, and I'm like, all right, this is bad friction, because, like, I don't need to be walking slow to, like, you know, you don't need to force me to walk slow to recognize this is a moment of gravity. If I want to stop and absorb it, I will. But then sometimes there's good friction, like I don't know, like, I've played, I'm almost done with Silent Hill 4. I've played in the last couple of years all of the mainline Silent Hill games, and there are elements of those games that feel dated and frictional and weird and janky, and I think they are the kind of things that I think if you were not trying to appreciate them, you might be like, this feels old and janky. But they are the kind of things that if you are actively trying to understand why they contribute to the larger experience being what it is, you understand that, like, friction is good sometimes, you know? It's like if there's like a salad bar and there's like a ice cream bar right next to it, you know? Like, it doesn't mean that, like, the salad isn't good or contributes to a good, like, meal or, like, good, you know, cultural nutrition or whatever. It's just that, like, if there is the less frictional option, I think there's a tendency to reach for it. And so yeah, I don't know. I think quality of life is a thing. It's a phrase that that is not capturing the full nuance of what it can lose sometimes when we quality of life things away that are good friction.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's so many things that that we lose by arguing that it's not smooth or clean or easy enough. It's like, it's an interactive medium, man. It's fine if sometimes you have to struggle to get to where you want to be. That's part of the enjoyment of things sometimes. You're right. You got to eat your broccoli so that the cheese tastes better. You know what I mean? But then you put the cheese on the broccoli and now we're in a whole different ball game. Or you could get some vegetables, some meat, and some cheese and put it on an Italian urban cheese bun at your local Subway.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, using offer code Noclip. 5% off your next order.
Brought to you by Subway. Yeah, I feel like there's also, I won't, you know, wax philosophic about this anymore, but one final point on this is that I think with my relationship to movies has changed a lot over time. And I think, like, there was this, I was thinking about this with, you know how I was talking about Harakiri recently, the movie Harakiri? So I sometimes I'll go on Letterboxd just to see, like, I you know, if I like a director, like I liked Harakiri, so I was like, what else has Kobayashi done? I want to see, like, what other movies people like by him, and then work my way through them. But while I typically don't read reviews on Letterboxd, I happened across one for Harakiri, and it really struck me because the person was basically like, it reflected back to me an element of my own past with my relationship to media, where they were like, how many times will I go through this cycle where I tell myself that watching, like, a classic or like an old movie or like a all-time great movie is a chore. And then I'll sit down and watch, like, Harakiri, or I'll watch Citizen Kane, or I'll watch The Apartment by Billy Wilder, and I'll be like, holy shit, this is like an experience that changes my life, that I'll, like, remember forever. And I think there's like I don't know. There's an unconscious. I can only speak for myself, but there was an unconscious assumption that I had to work to overcome that that experiences that were like more difficult or frictional. Like watching Ozu. I only got into Ozu movies in the last few years or whatever, and he's quickly become one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. And I always told myself, like, those movies are slow. It's going to be boring to watch. It's going to be a chore to watch. And then after just like forcing myself to watch them, I was like, holy shit, like this may be a more difficult watch than some movies that I like that are less frictional, but I will never forget this movie. It has impacted me emotionally in ways and stuck with me in ways that like easier to digest movies do not. And so I think that there is a there's something that like more frictional media can give you that's beyond just like entertainment value and fun. And so I don't know. I feel like it's the nutrition example is like talking about it like broccoli is like it's like an easy analogy that I made myself, but it doesn't capture the full like. You feel like enriched by these things in a way that makes it worth enduring the friction or something. And when you persevere and force yourself, sometimes you sit down and watch Harakiri and you're like, this is like better than movies that are easier to digest. Like it is digestible in a way that I would not have expected. You just have to like,
you know what it's like?
Past,
it's like an IPA. It's an
okay.
IPA.
Keep cooking on that. What do you mean?
IPA is perhaps the worst way to drink a beer for the first, I'd say 50 times you drink the beer.
Okay.
It's awful. But eventually you like it. And then you're like, I want to drink more IPAs. And I think
I do like IPAs, so yeah.
No, I do too now. When I started working at the liquor store, we had to drink one after work or I wouldn't be one of the cool kids. So I eventually started liking it. But man, you got to work your way up to that shit. It's like drinking potpourri. So I don't think that's too far off. Like you kind of have to work your way into liking that stuff. And the pain never really goes away, but you like it now all of a sudden. Like I like shit that tastes gross. Like I did not like kombucha until after
that is true.
drinking IPAs. Now I'm oh, the people are like, this is disgusting. I take a sip and I'm like, what do you mean? This reminds me of my favorite alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I was drinking just like straight up black tea, and I was like, oh, this is so fucking good.
See, but that's
like,
disgusting. But like,
no,
we like it now.
But like, I remember I had this flashback while I was drinking it to being a kid and being like, I want to like learn to like tea. And my mom would make tea, and I'd be like, oh, this is disgusting. Like,
where's the apple
how
juice?
much fucking? I would add sugar, and I would just add sugar, and it would never hit a point where I was like, that's enough sugar. It tastes good now. And I feel like, okay, this is the tea analogy. I feel like is better than the broccoli analogy. It's because you don't the way you engage with tea is not by trying to sweeten it until it tastes like something that is sweet. The way you engage with tea is by engaging with it on its own terms and trying to appreciate it for what it is. And so similarly, to translate the metaphor, when you sit down and watch an Ozu movie, it's not about like, this is too slow, I won't enjoy it. It's about finding the enjoyment in the pacing that it does present and engaging with it on its own terms and like pushing yourself to develop a taste for those things.
Boom. Beautiful.
We
I
did
love it. It took us like 4 different food analogies, but we eventually got here.
Broccoli, IPAs.
The height of critical games journalism here on the Noclip Crewcast is making food comparisons. But we did it. It worked, I think, in the end. Thank you so much for listening this week. This has been episode 196. Again, the games we talked about, if we did at all, were Deadlock, Citizen Sleeper 2, Metaphor ReFantazio, and the game that was sent from the email that Austin sent that was really nice, Museum of Mechanics, Lockpicking, and other things. We're going to be here next week with probably the whole crew. I believe everyone should be back. So it'll be all 4 of us talking about games that we didn't cover this week because Jeremy and I are too busy doing other things. But in terms of no-clip stuff that we've got going on, this week on the Crewcast feed, there was an episode that Danny did, a bonus episode of the regular Crewcast that Danny did with Jason Schreier, all about his book Play Nice, the book about Blizzard Entertainment, the rise, fall, and future of Blizzard Entertainment, I think is the full title. You could give that a good listen. It's very interesting. They talk a bunch about not just the book and the contents of it, but also their 2 different approaches to interviewing subjects in the games industry, what it's like working from the print media side of things, and also doing the same sort of thing from the video side, and the positives and negatives of doing both of those. It's a very interesting conversation. If you haven't heard it, I suggest giving it a listen. In terms of documentary projects, I know, Jeremy, you're still working on our Legacy of Kain doc, correct? It's coming along.
Yeah, so I basically, we've got a couple more interviews to do. I basically got that into a what I would call an extended assembly cut. There's I think Danny's talked about the archive stuff, but they gave us access to like 500,000 unseen archival assets and stuff. So I left it a little bit loose. Danny and I have found a good workflow of kind of like collaborative editing where there are some edits that I'll hand off to him as like pretty much ready to go, and then he'll make some final touches. And sometimes I'll be like, here's, a work in progress thing with a bunch of pins and notes in it and stuff. And so this one is kind of like an exploded edit, but I'm ready to hand it off to him. And then I am now working on a secret thing I cannot talk about, but it is maybe the most excited I've ever been for a Noclip doc.
Hell yeah. Yeah, there's tons of stuff going on again behind the scenes, stuff that Danny's teased. So if you've caught those teasers, you know what they are, but I'm not going to say them. And just there's stuff coming in the rest of this year that's just going to be mind-blowingly cool. So if you want to see it early, if you want to continue to fund it, and you want to be part of the great journey that is documenting video games, you can help us out at patreon.com/noclip. Get access to behind-the-scenes stuff, bonus episodes of the podcast. You know what's going on. I said it at the top. If you're still here, there's no way you didn't hear the beginning of this podcast. If you're still here, thank you.
I feel like we talked about Deadlock like 4 days ago.
Yeah, honestly, 30 lifetimes ago at this point. We've got a lot in this episode. So thank you so much for being here with us. We'll see you next week. Take it easy. Bye-bye.